Okay. Hopefully, only people can hear us this time. It looks fine, like it's actually coming up on the audio display. So hopefully that should be okay. Um, let's start, and then I suppose um, if people have got problems, then I suppose they can let us know. But you were saying so um, you end up just choosing just because name Bismuth, just because it was just a different sounding one on the periodic table.
Sorry.
Bless you, bless you, sir. Like it just sounded different and it just sounded cool on the periodic table.
Yeah, so I just chose the name Bismuth because I was in search of a new name at the time, and I was sitting in physics class, and I looked at the periodic table, and I saw the that just like had such a unique element name compared to all the others that I
Mhm.
was like, oh, that's a cool sounding name. I think I want
Mhm.
to use that, and I never looked back.
Uh huh.
That
And
was 15 years ago.
you felt like that unique name matched your unique personality. Uh
Absolutely.
huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I actually like didn't really know about the element itself at the time, but
Uh huh.
found out like it's a pretty
Isn't it?
cool metal with lots of interesting
Yeah,
properties.
if I remember correctly, isn't it like doesn't it have like the highest melting point or something like that?
The highest melting point is tungsten. Bismuth is the
Tungsten.
heaviest. It's the heaviest non-radioactive metal,
Uh
and it
huh. Okay.
it usually like makes these really colorful crystals, kind of like purplish with like lots of like sort of like rainbow colors in them.
Okay, that does sound cool. Um, so, I guess I just generally want to ask you. So you've been uh, are you aware of like how you're um, perceived in the speedrunning community at this point? Because I know you have been a runner. Would you say you're more perceived as the science guy, or do you still like to think of yourself as like a runner at heart?
I definitely feel like I can still like speed run just fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I feel like I definitely am more of a kind of uh I don't want to say like authority figure, but I feel like I'm more like a kind of a like prominent figure of the speedrunning community rather than seen as like
Mm-hmm.
one of the best speedrunners or anything. I was never like one of the best speedrunners, I kind of want to
Uh-huh.
say. So I guess like taking on this role of like sort of like a educator and entertainer,
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a ambassador of the speedrunning community, I guess is like pretty nice. So I feel like that's mostly how I'm perceived. Like a lot of people know that I also speedrun, but they don't necessarily know me for my speedrunning.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you get into it? How did when do you remember the first point at which you became aware of speedrunning?
Well, I kind of came up with it on my own as a kid because I used to play DK64 a lot, and my dad used to play it. He was well, he took a lot of roles, but he was doing like software development, working from home sometimes, and he would work a lot. And every now and then he just needed like a break from thinking about stuff and problems. So he would just like fire up DK64 and play for half an hour to an
Uh huh.
hour.
Uh huh.
And so he played through the game and got 101%, I would say about 10 to 12 times. He was never
Wow.
speedrunning it, but he was like always like he got to a point where he knew where all the stuff was pretty well, and he
Mm-hmm.
would, be a little more efficient about beating the game. And he was able to beat it in 13 hours, 42 minutes in game time.
So
And
he did time himself.
well, the game has an in-game like
Oh,
timer.
okay, right,
So,
got you,
like
got you. Okay.
when you check your file, you see the in-game
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he got 1342 just by playing and knowing where the stuff was. And I was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 at that time. And I tried to go faster than him, even though he wasn't trying to go fast.
Uh-huh.
And over the years, I eventually like got a little better, and I got down to 1030 or so. Like by the time I was 11 or 12, and that's also when we got like a proper computer with a proper internet connection. Like when I was 9 or 10,
Yeah.
so I actually started looking up online for Super Mario 64 and GoldenEye and Mario Kart 64. Although I didn't even have Mario Kart 64. I don't know why I wasn't interested in it, but
Mm-hmm.
I was just like looking up world record times and the Curtis Bright's webpage on his university portal that had like times for the Princess Secret Slide and Koopa the Quick Races and finding like
When
the
like
elite.
what year would this have been? Ish.
I think 2004 is probably accurate
Mm-hmm.
because I know I added Curtis Bright on MSN Messenger and I actually like I submitted Princess Secret Slide 12.4, which at the time tied the record.
Uh huh. Okay.
And I submitted that I think in 2004, maybe early 2005, and then it
And
was
you would have
beaten.
been what, 10 years old at this point?
I was 11, maybe 12.
All
So
right.
2004, I was
That's pretty
11.
impressive, dude.
Yeah. Uh, I I was pretty happy with that because I think that's like the only actually competitive time I've ever gotten like in
Mm-hmm.
those years.
Wow. Okay.
Like I think I got GoldenEye for my 12th birthday, and so I was like also looking at like the elite, all the records and the scores, and
Mm-hmm.
like being amazed at like Water Jansen and Brian
Yeah.
Bosshart just
Yeah.
dominating the boards. Like
Mm-hmm.
that era, I was kind of like a kind of a fan of it at the time, but too
Mm-hmm.
young to actually interact with the community. Um, so that's like basically when I became like really aware of it. And then like when YouTube, you know, started existing in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Well, started in 2005, but I started watching YouTube in 2006, and then I fell in the rabbit hole of SM64 TASes and a bit of Ocarina of Time stuff as well. So I also found Andrew G around 2007 when he was like getting his sub 5 SMB1 speedrun and stuff like that. So I was like interested in it, but I wasn't like actively partaking in like setting records, submitting times, or like being in any community or chatting with people other than just like Curtis Bright.
Mm-hmm.
And I submitted like submitted like a string of absolutely terrible single star times for his individual stars like uh, leaderboards. But other than that, I wasn't like really actively participating until 2012 when I started like racing and
Mm-hmm.
on SRL. Started like actually like streaming and doing speedruns.
And then that would have been DK64.
The first was actually, well, I posted on the SDR forums around 2009, 2010 because I wanted to beat the 101 record, which at the time was just segmented.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that the SDA run was the world record, but given how SDA worked, it wasn't like the world record for very long. It was
Mm-hmm.
eventually beaten. So I was trying to beat that 902 that was on SDA. And so I posted on the forums and I kind of like was doing my own thing. But I like when I started actually streaming, the first game I was playing was Minecraft because Minecraft was a pretty popular game to race on SRL for really like casual races that would be just be 15 minutes, like entering the
Mm-hmm.
Nether or doing some like short goal that doesn't really take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like what I first did, and then I started racing SM64 and Ocarina of Time, and eventually K64, and then I started like actually properly running the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you remember any particular records or anything you got from that time? Anything significant?
Well, I started actually after doing some races in Minecraft. I looked up the SDA thread on it, and I found that people were like interested in doing the any percent set seed speedrun, but nobody had actually like given it a proper shot. They were still
Oh,
like in the
wait. So
theory
any percent,
crafting.
set seed. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so any percent set seed is basically like you try to just kill the Ender Dragon and reach like the end portal that just like triggers the credit. That's the
Okay.
ending.
All right.
And but to do that, like there's a few steps you need to do first. And Minecraft being what it is, like it's a random world, so finding all those things you need would be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nowadays, like the speedruns are insane, but like back then, it wasn't like it was unthinkable to try to speedrun on a random seed.
Uh huh.
So a set seed is just like you find a number that you just put in the seed generator, and that will
Right.
give you all those
Got you.
in the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that event, like that, basically, I figured that was the way to speedrun Minecraft
Well,
because
and so
otherwise,
was that seed was the same seed used by everyone?
well, the thing about everyone is that like no one had been running the game yet. They were still
Mhm.
in the theory crafting stage. So in that SDA thread, they had found a seed that they thought had a lot of potential, but it hadn't been like properly routed yet. There was just
Mhm.
like we've got all these things that are like close and should work, and everything seems to be good, but
Mhm.
like no one like had actually like come up with the proper route and did
Uh
like
huh.
the actual run. So I was like, oh well, I want to try it then, and I did, and I came up with a route, refined it, and over like a year and a half of like on and off like casual ish running, I took the time down from like probably like 40 minutes my first run down to about 18.
Mhm.
But there was still like a lot of time left to save. I think I got it down to 16 something. No, it was still 18 minutes. When it was 18 minutes, I submitted to AGDQ
Mhm.
2014, and to my surprise, it actually was accepted, even though my run was garbage.
Uh huh.
Still, I
What would
guess
the
it's just
what would the
because
record have been at the time?
I was me because I was the only runner. I was the only one
Oh,
like
right, right,
seriously
right,
doing
right. Okay.
full game runs.
Uh-huh.
So it just happened that like since Minecraft was such a phenomenon at the time, that was like mid 2013 when the
Mhm.
submissions were happening. They were like, "Well, we gotta have this game." Also, like Notch had been donating like $10,000 to a GDQ every year, so they were
Okay.
like, "We gotta have Minecraft, right?" So
Mhm.
they
Okay.
kind of took
Yeah.
my run, and I had never been to a GDQ yet, and I only watched like a GDQ 2013 live because I happened to just join Twitch like 2 weeks after 2012 and the 2012 AGDQ ended. So like I that was still like really new to me, and being accepted was like kind of incredible. I was
Mhm.
kind of in disbelief. And so I kind of, just like tried to refine the run a little bit, and I got it down to 16 minutes. And by the time AGDQ rolled in, I had time. I had like a lot of time to left to save in that run, but there was a lot of random elements that could cost like minutes. So,
Mhm.
like the estimate was crazy high. I gave it like an estimate of 30 minutes, which they actually bumped up to 35 because it was like a PC game. They were counting setup in that time anyway. Um, so the estimate was on stream was 35 minutes. I ended up getting like a 16-minute run RTA, which
Uh-huh.
was like a 15 something
Uh-huh.
in game time. It was a new world record. So that became like a really like um, a lot of people like remember that run because it was one of the most watched, if not the most watched moment of AGDQ 2014.
Mhm.
And it just happened like that I set a record live, even though the run wasn't that great in hindsight. Um, so that was probably like the thing that I was most well known for at the time.
Wait,
Uh,
can you so I don't not know much about that run. Can you explain what it was that went so right with that run that enabled you to smash your estimate?
um, Well, I think it's more that nothing went wrong because usually there's always one thing that like the randomness just doesn't go your way.
Uh huh.
Like there wasn't that many things that could go wrong, but like it's just like there's one particular thing that I remember. Like you first go down into a stronghold and you needed to get arrows so you could like duplicate them and use them in the final fight. But to get arrows, you needed to find a skeleton and kill it. To, hopefully, it would drop arrows for you to
Mhm.
pick it up. But the problem is, like in the stronghold, like enemies will just spawn in random dark corners, but you don't know like where and which enemies you're gonna find. You just have to like run around hoping to find a skeleton at some point, and then once you kill it, it will drop arrows.
Mhm.
So that was part of the route, and that could usually take somewhere around like 5 or 6 seconds to 4 minutes, but
Mhm.
on average, maybe 45 to a minute. I think in that run it took about 30 to 40 seconds, I want to say, maybe a little
Mhm.
more. So like that was fine. And then like there's another random section later like where that could also like lose me a couple minutes, but that went fine. And then the end fight with the dragon, you have to like shoot these little crystals atop like obsidian pillars that are really high. You have like a few different ways you can do it, but the fastest is just like to stay at the ground and fire them with arrows.
Mhm.
But firing at them with arrows, like you have to aim like over them so the arrows like curve down and hit them. So like the further you are, the more you have to aim up. So you have to calculate that
Uh
distance.
huh.
It's kind of hard to get
Mhm.
them right. And I was just like firing at them one after the other, like nailing them first try, and
Mhm.
that probably saved me like a minute and a half or
Uh
something.
huh. Okay. All right.
And so that ended up like being enough to actually like clutch the record. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Were you what was going through your head when like all of this stuff was just going right?
I kind of everything was just happening too quickly. Like the whole event was so overwhelming. Like having
Uh-huh.
the full room behind me, because everyone was mostly waiting, I think, for the Wind Waker run that was immediately after mine. So like the room was filling up with people eager to watch that Zelda run, and I had actually Goose by my side commentating slash
Oh, okay.
just like saying like, "Let's go, good job, you got
No
this," because
way.
he didn't know
Okay.
anything about the game,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, that was just like wild, I guess, while it was happening. I just didn't see it. The time passed. The run just like flew by and it just
Like,
happened to be good.
do you feel as though you were actually able to communicate to the audience, just like how well you were doing, or do you feel like they didn't really understand? Like, uh,
Well, I feel like I didn't actually really know. I felt like I could be on pace for record, but I wasn't too sure.
mhm,
And so I was just like just trying to just keep in mind like what was coming next and just like try to talk about it, I guess, and
mhm,
just
mhm.
like
Okay.
when I was getting all these shots, I was like, "Oh, that's actually incredible! I can't believe I'm getting like all of these first try."
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like I got like really nervous and focused at the end because it's actually quite easy to die in that final fight.
Uh-huh.
Because you damage the dragon, you have to place beds and then attempt to sleep in them,
Mhm.
which you can't, and so they explode, and the explosion is what does the damage to the dragon. So you have to like time it really well to do the most damage, so the dragon is like as close to the bed as possible. But if it touches it before you try to sleep in it, the bed disappears. Like it
Uh-huh.
just
Mhm.
like gets removed, I guess. So you have to like time it really well, but also stand as far as possible yourself because if you stand too close, you kill yourself with the explosion.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of a weird like mix of like there's no setup. You're just like trying to aim like where the dragon's going to charge at you,
Mhm.
and also the dragon charging itself is always like really random anyway. So
Mhm.
sometimes you're waiting like for a minute and it's just like flying, doing nothing, and you can't do it anything to speed it up. So
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, it's just like a really nerve-wracking moment. I was like just focused on trying to survive and just finish the run.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, yeah. But I mean, obviously, like it worked. And did that like raise your profile to some extent?
I think a little bit. I was definitely known as like the guy who ran Minecraft at HDQ for a while.
Uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
then like after the years went by, I sort of became the guy that people go like, "Whoa, you're the guy who ran Minecraft in
Yeah. Okay.
2014."
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I didn't understand those were the same person.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, okay. Mm, and so from what I understand, Minecraft. I don't get the impression Minecraft was necessarily a massive part of like your speedrunning journey. So like, how long were you running it overall?
Well, I guess from the beginning to end, a year and a half, but I was also really focused on Turok 2 and DK64 at the time,
Mhm.
so I don't even know how much time I spent speedrunning Minecraft, but it's really not that much, and that like the run was not that great.
Mhm. Mhm.
I want to say maybe I spent around 60 to 100 hours,
Okay. Mhm.
maybe a little more.
Mhm.
So yeah, like it was decent, but like I think it was beaten within 2 weeks after HDQ. Like when
Okay.
people are like, "Oh, that thing we can do," and yeah, and then people who like were hardcore Minecraft fans like just destroyed it really quickly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But like yeah, I guess you're always gonna have that little part of of history that's gonna be exclusively yours. So no one can take that away from
Yeah,
you.
yeah, that's kind of funny to think back on. Yeah,
And so then it was what primarily DK64. I didn't realize you played Turok 2.
yeah,
Was that another one from your childhood?
sort of. Well, we used to rent it at the corner store, and my brother would play it because it would be way too scary for like 7-year-old me.
Okay. How much older?
And
How much older is your brother?
my brother is 6 years older,
Okay.
so he was about 13,
Mm-hmm.
14, 15. I was like 7, 8, 9 when we would
Okay.
rent it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd have it for like 2 or 3 days, and we didn't have a controller pack to save the game, so we just leave the N64 on for the whole time we had the game. And he
Okay.
would just like, try to get through it with a walkthrough, and usually it would always fail somewhere in level 4 or 5, like Lair of the Blind Ones or Hive of the Mantids, which are like insane mazes that get take like 6 hours to get through or something.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Do you remember? I have to say, getting my Nintendo 64 was one of my most memorable Christmases ever. Was yours a Christmas N64, or did you get it under some other circumstances?
Yeah, it was the Christmas '99 Jungle Green DK64
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
with I think my parents also got us SM64 and Ocarina of Time at the same time, along with like three more controllers. So like we really were set to begin with.
Uh-huh.
So that was pretty great. Although I guess like the only actual multiplayer game we had was DK64 since Ocarina of Time and SM64 are both single player games. But yeah, that like
was that something was that something you were craving at the time, or was it one of those ones where your big brother wanted it, and then when he got it, you happened to be playing
I think I think I remember wanting it for sure because I remember that like my cousin. I knew that my cousin had one, and I saw like a little bit of SM64, and it was like kind of. I have that memory of seeing SM64 before I had an
it?
N64 when I was maybe 4.
Like,
So I definitely
do you think that was
was
probably
conscious of
the
it.
first game you were exposed to?
Well, the first game we had a NES when I was growing up. Like
Okay.
my parents got that for my sister's like fourth or fifth birthday before I
Mhm.
was born. So there's a picture of me at like 1.5 year old playing SMB3 or something. So
That's awesome, man.
maybe
Mm.
2 years old. Yeah.
And then what? SM64, Ocarina of Time, DK64. Um, would you have completed all of them at the time, or is it one of those ones where you do a bit of it and then? So for me, I would have with SM64 and Zelda, I would have got like halfway through, and then I think it was like got like too tough, and then I couldn't do it. And then I had to come back later, as like in my early teens, and finish them. How has it been
Um,
for you?
well, I certainly remember that Ocarina of Time was a special challenge for us because our first language is French, and as kids, we didn't speak English very well. And
Okay.
so just like understanding the game was actually a pretty big challenge, and we got stuck on things that nobody would ever get stuck on otherwise.
Uh-huh.
And so I clearly remember like my brother needing help from a classmate because we were stuck in the Dongo's cavern. At the end of it, when you have to push a block down onto the switch,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a place where like the block drops and then it's stuck against the wall, so you have to go and pull it instead.
Uh-huh.
But we didn't realize you could pull blocks. We only thought you could push them. So we're like, how
Right.
do we get this block out of this wall? We don't. Somehow we never thought of trying to pull it, and that got us stuck for long enough that my brother actually has to, for someone
Get
in
outside help.
this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the kind of hurdles that were like not supposed to be there. So I guess like I remember DK64 confused us the first like few months, but we kind of got through it eventually. I don't like. I think like the first playthrough, I wasn't really contributing because I was like too young to
Mm-hmm.
be holding the controller. But eventually, like I got to play on my own and beat it many times.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like I probably beat all of those games within a couple years of having them. I guess
Mm-hmm.
when I was still like 8, 9.
Would you be able to pick a favorite?
Well, I think definitely like DK64 is a personal favorite for many reasons. Like it's like a mix of nostalgia and I really love the music and the speedrunning is insane in this game. And so there's a lot of really good reasons to love that game.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel like as a speedrun, Mario 64 is just unbeatable.
Yeah.
It's like the absolute golden child of speedrunning. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's the perfect game. It's really
Uh-huh.
insane.
Yeah.
And Ocarina of Time is also feels like a perfect speedrun game for like completely different reasons, but at this point it almost feels like it's too broken for its own good.
Yeah.
But there was like this
I was exactly what I was gonna come next. Like, how do you feel about the brokenness of the latest Ocarina of Time runs?
yeah, I feel like Ocarina of Time actually got too broken for its own good.
Yeah,
And I feel
I
like the
agree.
overall hype died down a little bit because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um which is interesting to think about. But like the fact that the game is it just amazes me how the game can be this solid and this broken at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
like in casual gameplay, you could play this game for like 400 hours and never land on a single glitch or single sequence break or find anything.
Yeah.
But like if you know exactly where to look, you can do anything with that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's really crazy in that sense.
I feel like Ocarina of Time was the first game that made me like reconsider. I had a very, I guess, I don't know what you might call like a very libertarian stance with regards to like game category or any percents. Like
Hmm.
I was for a long time I was of the opinion is like nah, the whole point of speedrunning is to beat the game as quickly as possible and then like that's all that should matter. But I think seeing what happened, like going from like such a beautiful speed run with the wrong warp and stuff like that, and I don't know, it just felt like such a cohesive speed run, and it was just so captivating to the basically just fucking around in Kokiri Forest till the end credits come up.
Yeah.
It's just not the same, man. Like, yeah,
I feel like that kind of also matters with how the run was when you first saw it.
yeah, mm-hmm,
Because like when I first saw Ocarina of Time speedruns, the run was essentially what's now called like No I Am Wrong Warp, where like you would just like get the bow, get like Shadow Early and Spirit medallions, like get those two things and
mm-hmm,
get light arrows and beat the game. It would be like an hour and a half, I think.
mm-hmm,
And then when I started watching Twitch, I stumbled on ZFG, who was doing any percent, which at the time was 45 minutes ish, where the game would end with a wrong warp from the Dungle's Cavern to the credits.
mm-hmm,
And then Ganondorf was found, and that
mm-hmm.
was like dropped down to 20 minutes, down
Yeah,
to
yeah,
18
yeah, yeah.
minutes eventually.
Yeah, I think
So,
that was when it was like Cosmo when I was or not sister,
mhm.
like when I first discovered it.
Yeah. So I feel like if you if you were like in that like late 2000s era where any percent was like an hour and a half and it was like, pretty going through the game in some way at least, like skipping a lot of dungeons, but still like, beating the game, I guess. And then that like strat comes out where you can just beat the game from the Dungo's Cavern. I feel like that would already be a point of contention where you're like, you don't even beat Ganon anymore. Like, what's the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
And then like if you join the community in that admittedly short period where the any percent run was 40 minutes long, and you're like all of a sudden you don't even need to get out of Kokiri Forest. It's just like Deku Tree straight to Ganon and
Uh huh.
goodbye in 18 minutes.
Yeah.
That I feel like almost a lot of people also felt like that was kind of like ruining any percent a little too much, and then
Uh huh.
like gradually over the years, like more people came in, and that was their experience of any percent. So
Mhm.
that was like their core OOT speedrun. So
Mhm.
when that like eventually got replaced by the ace in like 3 minutes, that then those people are like, oh, now the speedrun is ruined because it used to be so great. So like always like whenever there's a huge change to the speedrun, there's
Mhm.
always like a good chunk of people who are like, I miss what the old speedrun was like, and now this new one does not seem as fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's kind of like a growing pain of
I mean, like, but do you think that um, is it arbitrary code execution like that's used in the latest one, or is it something different?
yeah, it's SRM, which stale reference manipulation with rock that you unload, and then yeah, like Link is holding an unloaded rock, and that loads. Uh, I don't remember what else, but basically, like by reloading the area a certain way, you load something else in his hands,
Mhm.
and so like Link's facing angle sort of like becomes like your destination for the warp or something. I don't remember the exact details,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
essentially, like the core glitch behind it is still reference manipulation, where Link is holding an object that is no longer loaded and gets replaced by something else, and now the memory doesn't match up the
Mhm.
same, and that leads to Ace eventually, where I think the file name and some other thing like ends up being read as code, and that lets you warp to the credits.
Okay. Like, cause I I struggle to imagine a generation of Zelda players that are gonna watch that and ever feel like I agree with you that like yeah, the more you cut out of the game, that each subsequent generation is gonna feel like oh, it's not the same as it used to be. But I struggle to imagine a generation of players who are gonna be captivated by this in the same way that it was before. You know?
Yeah, I feel like ace speedruns, especially the ones that do like a credit warp in like under 5 minutes, are generally like really incredible as like novelties, but the
Yeah.
novelty wears up a lot quicker.
hmm I would agree with that because I think like still, you know, when the run got to the point where there's the is it just called the door clip? The one from like the it's got a name, but it's the clip when you fall down through Ganon's tower.
Hmm.
Like it's got a name like is it the
Um,
West or something like that?
it's right. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember
But you
what
know
it
what I
was.
mean though. The one where you
Yeah.
clip through the tower, like because
Hmm.
that was kind of like the kind of crux of the run, and then that kind of decided like what was going to happen.
Hmm.
And it was still clutch, and then you had to clutch out Ganon like afterwards. So it felt like a real speed run. But yeah, I agree with you. The newer ones seem like a bit more of a novelty. It's probably a good way of describing it. You feel as though DK64 doesn't hold up quite as well as the other two in terms of raw speedrunning quality?
Well, I feel like the bar is just impossibly high with those two
Okay, yeah,
games,
yeah.
but DK64, in my opinion, is still a top tier speedrunning game. Like there are a few things about it that make it so it's not like the most incredible to watch, but there's like a lot of really fun stuff in it, and 101 especially is like 101% I feel like is one of the best speedrunning category that's more than like 4 or 5 hours long.
Mhm, mhm,
Like there are very few games where there's a category that's like 5 hours or longer, and it's actually like packed with a million different tricks and glitches and like tricks
mhm,
all the time and platforming and like really hard stuff and like really like intense skips that like can save minutes if you get them but can really go wrong and stuff like that. Like
mhm,
the one run is full of those. And like usually when you think of like 5 hour plus runs, it's usually RPGs, lots of menuing strategy. It's a different beast, but you don't like really get like this platformer with a lot of tricks and like crazy like all these things that you have in a speed run.
mhm,
So
yeah.
like in that sense, I feel like 101 is really unique in that it's such an entertaining run for its length. Like it even I feel like Zelda 100% categories kind of feel like there's a lot of like item collecting that is not always that interesting speedrunning wise.
Mhm.
But in DK64, like yes, there's a lot of item collecting that's not that interesting, but like the most of it is doing like the 201 golden bananas, and they're kind of most of them are interesting in some way. So
Mhm. Are you a fan of
yeah,
collectathons in general, or like just this one? Really?
yeah, I like collectathons in general. Although I didn't grow up on banjo games, I think they're really good. It's just I don't have that nostalgia, so
Mhm.
I kind of like just appreciate them. But I just like collecting stuff. So
Okay.
in
Nice.
games,
Uh-huh.
it's just something I like doing. So yeah, collectathons are good.
Uh-huh. Like when you slightly off topic, were you big into Pokemon cards then?
No, I wasn't really into Pokemon growing up. I liked playing Pokemon Yellow, but on emulator when I was a teen.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But that's basically the only real Pokemon game I played like more than just a little bit.
Mhm.
And I didn't really watch the anime. I watched a few episodes when like it just happened to be on TV when I was being like babysat when I was like I don't know 6 or 7 or
Right. Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Mhm.
I wasn't really that much into it.
Mhm. So, what would you say would be the pinnacle of your DK64 career?
Probably the 559.
Mhm.
So at the time it was 2017. 101 was kind of in a stable spot where like the route hadn't really changed much. We had done some like rerouting of levels and the route was in a good place. We felt like the run was like good to just like grind out for runs and not like try to innovate more. And the record was had gotten down from like 556 to 552, I think, a few months prior. And I had been running like daily 101 runs for a while because I guess I had the time to do that. And I just like it culminated into me getting a sub six time, which was 7 minutes off the record. And I like at that point I felt like I was close to world record potential. I was definitely like a top runner of the game
Mm-hmm.
and my favorite category. So that like probably was the time when I was like the strongest speedrunner in the DK64 community as a whole. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like my strength as a speedrunner within that community. Like, if there was like a leaderboard for like skill at the game, I think
Mm-hmm.
that moment was probably when I would have been like the highest.
Mm-hmm.
I also was doing a lot of bingo, and I was probably the best at bingo at the time. So like that
Wait,
moment, I
sorry,
guess, like
sorry, sorry, sorry.
2017.
What's that? Bingo?
Yeah, so speedrunning bingo, that's like mostly popular for OOT speedruns, but it's also in a lot of other games.
Uh-huh.
So essentially, you just like take a bingo card, like it's a 5 by 5 grid,
Yeah, yeah.
and instead of having numbers, you just have goals and things to do in the game. Sometimes it's restrictions, actually. So you just pick a line that you're going to try to complete faster than everyone else. So it's a race
Uh-huh.
for like completing a string of five goals
Okay,
that in a
okay, all
single
right.
line.
That's cool.
And the boards are always balanced so that like there are like 25 different levels of difficulty of for each goal. So in one given board, you're always gonna have like each of the 25 levels of difficulty, and they always add up to the same because it's a magic square.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to like try to find like whatever has the best synergy between different goals because usually the total difficulty should be about the same given like if it's balanced properly.
Mm-hmm.
So like you just choose like whatever you think is going to be best. So there's a lot of like routing on the fly and deciding like what do you think is faster and just like knowing the game really well and knowing off the
Mm-hmm.
top of your head like what do I need for this, what do I need for that, why is this faster, what is the good synergy, what is bad synergy.
Uh-huh.
And so thinking all of that and then routing your bingo as you go. So that it takes a lot of brain power as you're doing it because you also need to be running the start of the game every time. So
Mm-hmm.
DK64 is a really good game for bingo.
Oh yeah, I can
Like
imagine. With just the sheer amount of stuff there is.
yeah, the game is really wide open. You can enter almost any level at any time because there's usually a way to enter every lobby early, and there's usually a way to enter to bypass B locker.
Mm-hmm.
So golden banana requirements just don't matter, and keys don't really matter most of the time.
Yeah.
So you can just like go anywhere at any time and do all your goals, like free the columns early and just like yeah, get going on your stuff about. It takes about 15 minutes, I'd say, for bingo to really like get going because you first need to get key 5 to enter creepy castle, and then you need to go to the creepy castle boss to free all the columns because there's a like that boss kind of uses the tag barrel and assumes that you have everyone, so you can just use that to free everyone. Like once you get that going, then you like really the game is wide open from that moment, and you can just go anywhere and do all your goals. So like you get that moment where like the start is somewhat the same with some variation if you need to, but you have time to like really think of what you're going to be doing for the next half hour to an hour.
Uh huh. Like, what? I mean, yeah, you were just saying that it's not just it's not just sit down and play. You actually have to like it's like fairly cerebral.
Mhm.
Would you say you're more of a brain player or more of a brawn player?
Yeah, I was definitely like when I was doing bingo, the reason I was the best at it was because of my routing
Uh
and
huh.
my
Uh huh.
ability to find the best row really quickly and just route it really well. And because usually like I would race Znernicus a lot, who had the 101 world record and who has always been a better runner than me.
Uh
So
huh.
like if I wanted to win against him, I had to pick a better row and I had to route it
Mhm.
better than him. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'd say like that was mostly the reason what I was dominating bingo. And like I feel like nowadays when I do bingo, I never come in first anymore because if I still have, and that's actually a big if I still have any superiority, sorry, superiority, and in like choosing the rows and routing them, I'm still gonna be too far behind on execution, and I'm still gonna like
Mm-hmm.
come in second or third anyway.
Yeah.
So like yeah, I think but bingo is a lot of fun, and I did it a lot in those years, like 2016, 2017. So that's like yeah, definitely the moment I was at my peak in DK64 was 2017.
Okay. Um, and so how long was it between that and you making your um, first educational video?
It didn't take very long. That was kind of happening almost at the same time. So when I was running DK64 a lot, I was also interested in Super Mario Brothers. That kind of happened with well, it first happened, I guess, just by watching YouTube and stumbling on Andrew G speedruns. I want to say 2007, and later, like I he was still running a bit less active, but also Cosmic was like used to run DK64, so that's where I knew him from.
Oh, okay, I didn't know
And then
that.
he was also playing SMB1, and like he started around 2012 and became a top runner around 2015, 16.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like already like I was following him, and I was already like interested in SMB1. So I kind of got into SMB1 a little more through him, and then found like Darbian and Sumwest, who were like the other, like basically the four top runners around 2016, 17 were Andrew G.
Yeah,
Cosmic, Darbian, and
I remember
Sumwest.
that era quite well. I think.
Yeah, so around that era, I was like watching a lot of SMB1 streams just because I loved watching all of them. Like they were all really chill and fun streamers to watch. Like I'm really more of a chill stream watcher than
Uh-huh.
a crazy like entertaining like all over the place like
Uh-huh.
screaming into the mic.
Uh-huh.
Really excited. Like if there's a sub alert, I'm generally out within 10 minutes.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right.
So I like all of them I watched regularly, and so that was like 2017 around the same time. And in early 2018, Cosmic just happened to beat the any percent world record with a mid 456. And every
Was
time,
that the one that he got really quickly, or was that the one that was like really insane for the time?
actually none of those. It
Oh,
was
okay.
just like when flag booklets started becoming like actually viable because Sockfolder found the setup for it.
Wait,
So
when you
like there
say
was a
flat booklet, what?
the flagpole glitch, like
Oh,
where Mario
flagpole
clips
glitch. Yeah,
inside.
yeah, no, I heard
Yeah.
flat booklet, and yeah, okay, yeah,
So the flagpole glitch where Mario clips inside the base of the flagpole
yeah,
and
another
saves
one.
0.35 seconds. So when Sockfolder found a viable setup for that, like it took like a couple weeks, I think, for the record to drop from like a low 457, which was
Mm-hmm.
insanely optimized for what it was at the time, down to 456.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the race was on to just like get more of them because if you
Right,
could get
yep, yep,
three
yep.
of them in a run, you could save a whole second.
Mm-hmm.
So that was around that time when
Okay.
Cosby got the mid 456. It was just like a good run with two flagpole glitches, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so like I already had witnessed a bunch of new SMB1 records by that time, and I knew the drill. Every time there would be like Kotaku articles, like all the gaming websites would talk about it. It
Yeah.
would be posted on Facebook, and that would be the sea of stupid comments like, "Oh, why is he not die? Oh, he's cheating. Oh, I did that so much better when I was
Yeah,
four," and
yeah.
all of this bullshit. And I was like, "It's so
Enough.
annoying." Yeah, I was like, it's so annoying how nobody can appreciate the speedrun because they're all so stupid and
Mm-hmm.
ignorant about it. And so I thought I should like take the run and just play it back. And every time there's something that would confuse someone, like a casual watcher, uh, I just pause it there and go like, okay, let's explain what happened here and just like break it down. So that was just like the premise.
Yeah.
And actually, like for some reason, I was in a really weirdly productive part of my life, I guess. Because like 2 weeks prior, I had joined a SM64 task competition. For like the first time, I was like actually trying to task SM64 properly.
Uh-huh.
And there was like this goal that was like really short. It's like a really short task, and you have 2 weeks to make it. And I spent like 80 hours on it. I was going insane over it, and I came in third over 62 people
Uh-huh.
among like a sea of really talented SM64
Was this
taskers.
and was this third in terms of just speed?
Yeah, so the leaderboard is just like whoever finishes the task the fastest, and it's like something like 15 seconds. It's really short.
Uh huh. Uh
So like usually it's decided by frames,
huh.
and so I came in third over 62 people, and I beat like a lot of really really good SM64 testers that actually put a lot of effort into their tasks,
Okay.
and
Interesting.
I just like went in it with like so much effort and so much like optimization. I was going insane over it,
Wait,
like
wait,
going to bed at 4 a.m.
had you been tasking a lot already, or was that
No,
one of your?
I had basically never tested the game before.
Damn. Okay.
Like I downloaded Stroop for that for the first time and like just like started learning how like everything worked.
Uh huh.
So that was like the 2 weeks immediately before I was like, I should make a video about the SMB1 speedrun. So like the instant that task was done and I had stopped like tasking that game for like 10 hours a day for 2 weeks straight,
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I should do this. And then at the time, I was working weekends because it was the winter, and I had like kind of a seasonal job where I had less hours in the week in the winter. So I was only working like 3 days a week, and I used those days to come up with the script because I was at the computer long enough to like have time to do that.
Hmm.
So I was writing the script. I think I wrote the whole thing in one weekend over those 3 days at work.
Uh huh.
And then once the script was over, I was like, well, now I got to record it. And my headset mic was terrible, and someone said, "Oh, you should use your phone instead. That should be better." So I used my phone in my bedroom, just like this phone sitting on the
Uh huh.
bed
Uh
and me
huh.
talking into it.
Uh huh.
And I recorded it.
Were you using the blanket at that time, or did that come later?
No, the blanket came a lot later.
Okay,
The sound
we'll get into
quality in the
that.
first video was absolute
Uh
garbage.
huh. Uh huh.
And so I took like 3 or 4 days to record that. And once I was done recording the whole script, I was like, well, now I need to start editing. So I was like, well, what's a good like video editing program? Like the script was already written and recorded. And I was like, what's a good video editing program? Maybe I should start thinking about
Uh
that.
huh.
So I was really like taking it in weird, like weirdly complete steps, like chunks of like the
Yeah.
process. And I eventually just finished the whole thing in 2 weeks. Like
Damn.
the whole editing, like it's a 27-minute video. It probably took about like 120 hours maybe
Yeah.
over like 12 days. So just like working all day on it. Like
Damn.
working on the script while I was at my actual work and then just like editing all day when I was off work.
Mhm.
So yeah, this happened, I guess. Like in that 4 week period, I probably spent like an average of 8 hours a day either working on that SM64 task and then that video and just
Wow,
like
dude. So you like so like when did it like do you have any kind of was there some kind of catalyst for this burst of motivation, or was it just like out of a
yeah.
bolt from the blue?
I really don't know what happened. I just had a good month of February, I guess.
All right, okay.
And
But
yeah, and
it's
once
weird.
that
It's
video
weird.
came out,
It's weird how that is, man. Sometimes like just one good
yeah,
month can just change your
I was
entire
just
life.
on fire, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Once that video came out, I was like hoping, like I really believed that I had something good there, and I was hoping it would maybe reach like up to 1 million views. Was like I think that's like the upper limit. I
Hmm.
think it has the potential to actually reach that eventually, and that actually got
How many is it
met
on now?
in well, so the 1 million views I was hoping for got met in 11 days. That's what it took for it to reach 1 million.
Holy shit! Wow. Okay.
I'm a completely unknown channel with like 400 subscribers before that.
Yeah, dude.
And it actually just kept going even faster until I think it kind of leveled off around 3.5 million, I
Mhm.
think.
Not bad.
And but it still like kept going like pretty steadily, pretty quickly still for like months and months and months. And it actually like really did level off at 8 million. So
Uh
now
huh.
it's been at 8 million for like 5 straight years and it's
Oh, okay.
barely going up anymore. But
Okay. All right.
it stopped at 8 million, but it's still like an insane amount that I could
Yeah.
never like have dreamed of.
Yeah, dude.
It's just a shame that my most viewed videos like my two most viewed videos are like my two most viewed by a lot. It's the very first two that I made on SMB1,
Uh huh.
and they're so bad compared to like everything else that I
Uh
made. But
huh. Yeah.
the ones
Interesting.
that everyone has seen,
Mhm.
7 and 8 million.
What's your second one?
The second one was when 455 happened.
Okay.
So that's the one that Cosmic got really quickly. So he tied the world record with a
Mhm.
456.24, I think it was, or at least point 0.2.
Mhm.
And then he was like, "Oh well, what else do I need? Like, I was gonna stream for like 3 hours, and I'm like an hour in. So what do I do now?
Yeah,
Might
yeah,
as well
yeah.
just
Mhm.
go for 455,
Mhm.
right?" And so he added like this 1-2 pipe clip that's like a one frame jump that's really frame perfect, one frame A tap
Mhm.
in a 60 FPS game. So like just pressing the A button for a single frame in that game is almost impossible. So
Mhm.
that trick is really hard. And he was like, "Well, I'm gonna try it." And then he got 9 attempts in. On his ninth attempt, he got the pipe clip for the first time, and he
Yeah.
just got the entire
And
run,
then clutched
nailed
the
it.
yeah the whole
Yeah.
run. Yeah.
So that was a really crazy run, and so I made a video on that. And on like at the time, that was thought to be the final second break because 454 just did not seem humanly possible.
Mhm.
And so the idea behind that video was like, this is the final second break, and here's why like 454 is just not feasible.
Mhm.
And so there was a lot of like talking about the run itself, but also talking about what the possible time saves could be. And so
Mhm.
the conclusion of that video was like maybe 455.2 would be about the limit, but
Mhm.
further than that is wishful thinking. And
Yeah.
then setups and all these like new knowledge was found like over the years, and now like 454.3 is pretty like I'm pretty sure it's gonna happen at some point.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I'm absolutely sure. I remember. I remember both of those. So how many views is that on now?
Yeah, that one actually got to 1 million in like 6 days, even faster.
Wow, dude.
And now it's sitting at some like 7.5 or something, 7 million something.
Okay.
So those two are by far my two most viewed videos.
Mhm.
The only one that starts to go, I guess no, there I have two of them that are kind of close at 3.7 and 3.4 million, which are the SM64 any percent task in 4 minutes,
Mhm.
and the 454 in SMB1 that also like got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
they're still like less than half of the views of my first two videos.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what were you? What was going through your mind when you were just seeing like the this absolutely like stratospheric rise in the views, like after you uploaded the?
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I definitely like I was still working like my regular job at the time, and I was like, well, what do I
What were
do
you
with
doing?
this? I think well, I was working at a recycling center, so it was like a fun day job that was like uh like it was a enjoyable job to have, but it wasn't like I knew it was going to be like a full career, and I didn't really quite know where I was going at the time, so I was just like writing this fun job I had that I got to work with my brother, which was fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I was just working like all day outdoors, like mildly physical, just to keep me in shape. So it was a fun time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was just like, I do have a little bit of time to keep working on YouTube videos. So I think I should
Yeah.
like keep this format of like taking a speedrun and explaining everything that's going on because I think there's a lot of potential and kind of nobody really had done it before. Like Tomato Anus, I think, did it for Fallout speedruns or
Mm-hmm.
like the games that he was running. I think he did like a couple of those videos around 2016, 2017. But like that was pretty much only like also Summoning Salt had started doing the world record progressions, but that's like
Mm.
I feel like that's separate enough from what I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
doing
yeah.
that
So I mean, like, what year would that have been when you started?
my first video came out on March 2nd, 2018. So that's a little over
Was
6 years
Was
ago now.
Carl around then, or was he not on the scene?
Uh that's a good question. I think he hadn't actually started making like proper YouTube content. But I think he was already like pretty well known on Twitch doing
Yeah, because
speedruns.
I would know. Yeah, I guess he wouldn't have been because I know his damn 52 would have been in like December 2017 or something like that, and then he
Yeah,
went on his
Dan
subsequent
50.
tear, which took him like through 2018. So I guess he probably wasn't making YouTube videos at that point.
Yeah, I'd say the first like video that he made, top five biggest skips in Perfect Dark speedrunning, that's like proper YouTube
Uh huh.
content. And that was December 31st, 2018. So I guess you could say like 2019 is when he started.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I was like a year earlier, but I only made two videos in 2018 and only like really started working on YouTube videos like and actually started doing it full time in early 2019. So
Okay.
I feel like 2019 is a little more like the time that I actually started like doing it seriously.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But yeah, sorry, I interrupted. So the point at when these videos were like absolutely blowing up, like were you already thinking like, oh man, like this could actually be like a really good opportunity for me, or were you just kind of like enjoying the ride at that point and just no expectations?
yeah, definitely. Well, I didn't think I would go full time with it, but I definitely wanted to make more at that point because I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I think the idea is good and nobody has done it really, and so I think it should work if I just put the time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I maybe naively I thought I thought I was already good at it, even though
Mm-hmm. Okay.
looking back, like those videos are impossible for me to watch.
Uh huh.
But yeah, basically I was just like I think I should do it, but I was also working and I had like other stuff going on in my life, so was still pretty busy. Um, so I guess I really like only started like thinking I should take this seriously and go into it when and I think it was in February or March 2019. I said I was working with my brother. He was like the main supervisor, and I was like his assistant, I guess, who would like, work the shifts he wasn't working and do other stuff like that. And he actually took another job in the same company that was like elsewhere, and basically the main supervisor had to be replaced, and it was either going to be me who was going to take more responsibilities for not much of a better pay, or someone else who I knew was going to have that job if I wasn't going to take it, and I was not going to be interested in working under him
Okay.
because I knew he wasn't as competent as my brother, and I
Uh-huh.
knew that was not going to be fun. So I was like, well, I'm at a crossroads, and my job is about to become worse in one way or another, or I could just use that opportunity to just like quit and go
Yeah.
YouTube full time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been living under my means for long enough that I had no money issues at all. So I was like, now's the time to do it. I could try it for like a whole year, even 2 years, make 0 cent out of it and still be fine. So
Wow. Okay.
let's
Good
just
stuff.
try it.
Good stuff. Dude. And so what would have been the first video you made under those circumstances, being like, right, we're actually gonna give this a proper go now.
Yeah, so I at that point I was like, I know I want to do this format of like, speedrun explained and the whole like thing, that formula of breaking down the run piece by piece.
Mm-hmm.
But there was like a few things that I thought that needed like talking about that were just like general ideas. And so the first thing I did was just like cover those. I did a video that's called the 10 myths about speedrunning that are like 10 of the really annoying things that a lot of people say about it, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like speedrunners don't appreciate the game because they just want to rush to it like as fast as they can.
Mm-hmm.
When it's like they don't realize that a speedrun is not like it's like the finished product of so many months of work and effort, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like they don't realize that a speedrunner, yes, that run is faster than anyone else, but also they have been speedrunning this game for years.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I've
true.
played it like hundreds of hours. If they
Uh-huh.
hated that game, they would have stopped years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's that kind of stuff that like and I guess that video like kind of, I wouldn't say it was controversial, but it was my most controversial one, which is really not much, but
Uh-huh.
it wasn't like received that well because I guess like it kind of missed the target audience because my target audience was people who actually believe those things, and they would just usually just be like, what you're saying is bullshit because of what I think is right.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And the other part of my audience was like speedrunners and people already interested in speedrunning who are like, there's no chance that anyone actually believes like this nonsense, right?
Uh-huh.
But I was always like backing up the myths I was bringing up with like screenshots of like dozens of comments in my videos that
Right.
already
Yeah.
had them. Just from the first two videos I had made, I could bring up like 12 comments about why is he speedrunning this? He should cure cancer instead,
Uh-huh.
or
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff like that. So that was the first one, and then the second one was about tassing. So like like what is how do you do it? Like why would you do it and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like another 15-minute video that was just like general concept that I wanted to cover in like a video that I could then like use as a reference for like if you don't know what a task is, I made a video on that. So
Hmm.
like that was my like kind of like first steps that I wanted to take, like just do those two topics and then I could like move on to
Yeah.
do like these videos without having to go like, oh, so why is he getting this world record instead of curing
Uh
cancer?
huh.
Like
Okay.
that is covered. No need to talk about
So
that
you must
anymore.
like kind of like lay the groundwork first. So if anyone
Yeah.
ever asks, be like, all right, look at these videos.
Yeah, so that's what I did. Like when I was like, I'm going full time, I'm gonna do these two first, and then I can actually start making the videos I want to make. And then I started with the Super Mario 64 one key task, the any percent in 4 minutes.
Hmm.
So that's like a completely wild task that takes 40 minutes to explain for a 4 minute run.
Uh huh.
Like half of it is just spent on the moat door skip with like the BLJ to negative 3.4 million speed and going to parallel universes and the
Hmm.
routing like for the overflow jump and moving around and then like running into the door in a single frame and opening it before you enter the water and like that whole thing just like is insane.
Hmm.
And so breaking down that run was really really fun, and I loved working with SM64, and I knew that I would come back to that game at some point.
Uh huh. Like how what's your process for like I don't want to say like just simply reaching out, but kind of like is it just a case of you just ask and people are just really generous with their time, or
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's a speedrunning community, really.
uh huh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've basically never had any issue with finding help for research. Usually, it's just like you message someone and they're really eager to talk about it.
Uh huh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, that's just how it works.
And so would that have been? I guess you would have gone into the Discord for that, and I don't know, just like who would have been your main? I don't know what's the word, like consultants for that video.
Well, for that task, it was mostly, well, Tyler Caney was really instrumental because he tasked the whole motor skip section.
Uh huh.
So he knew everything about it and he walked me through it like painstakingly. And so I was talking with Tyler Caney, Patton Koick, just because he wasn't involved in that task directly, but he's just like an absolute library of knowledge
Uh
on
huh.
SM64. And also, I was looking up to his content a lot. It's funny because a lot of people compare me to Summoning Salt, especially when I started, because Summoning Salt was like sort of like the only big speedrunning YouTuber at the time when I started. So like I was seen as a copy and compared to him a lot, but actually I was emulating Pan and Koic style of videos when
Ah,
I
interesting.
from
Yeah,
the
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
beginning. Like my main influence was Pan and Koic.
That makes a ton of sense when now you say that.
So yeah, I had him and I had Tyler Kinney and I had I don't remember the others. It's been 5 years, but I had like
But like
five
so,
or
but
six
like
people.
Sonic Packer.
Was he? I don't think he was on that group. But yeah, it was just like a DM group on Discord. I
Mm-hmm.
probably still have it like buried at the very bottom of my history. Can I find it real quick? Yeah, I can't find it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I think I actually made a server at the time, and I think I might have actually killed that server now.
Oh, cool.
Nope, it is still around. Bad Boo, Tyler Keeney, MK Dasher, One Ted
MK
59.
Dash, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's I would have expected that definitely.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if there were any others because a few people left the server, but
Uh-huh.
kind of surprised actually that I have 4 people in that server, even though there's been no activity for 5 years. Anyway,
And
yeah,
so I guess you would have already had a lot of the know-how of that from doing the tasking competition.
I definitely, well, I was a big fan of Pen and Cook's content, so I watched like all of his videos already. So
Mm-hmm.
I already like had a really solid knowledge base about the game before even starting to task it. And so that really helped because I wasn't like going at it completely clueless. But there was still a lot of stuff that I needed to be like carefully explained, and I got a lot of things wrong, and I had to be corrected and all that stuff. But yeah, basically, just like being so interested in SM64 for many, many years really helped me get going. And then the consultants did the rest of the work to get me to
Mm-hmm.
speed.
Yeah. Um, so how long would it have been between between that video on the one key task and the first one on the ABC challenge?
Well, the ABC, the ABC series actually started kind of earlier than it seems. The first episode came out on April 24th, 2021, but I messaged Pan and Koic about it. Let me see if I can find it. Might be hard because it was several years ago.
I mean, was it kind
Uh,
of born in the fires of the one key task video, given that you were already talking to all of these guys?
it was a little later, definitely. I should be able to find it pretty soon. Oh, oh, there it is. Oh, yeah, 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 okay. So I messaged Pan and Cook on April 14th, 2020. He posted a video about the 19 remaining A presses at the time. Every time like they would reach sort of milestone, he would
Mm-hmm.
make a video about all the remaining A presses.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I said like I was thinking it could be interesting to make a series about the history of SM64 ABC. So that was April 14, 2020, and part one actually came out almost exactly 1 year after that, day for day.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
So like it actually took a while for the project to actually get going. But yeah, I guess like it took a little less than a year for me after finishing the one key task to think about making the ABC series. But then I kind of got lost in a bunch of other things. Um, I was working on, I think, SMB one. No, that was even what I was working on. That's crazy early. I was still working on Ocarina of Time Wrong Warp Explained when I thought about that series. I don't know what took me so long to actually get going on it. But I know like I did the research for part one. I think it was around September and October 2020. And then I kind of shelved the project because a Zelda 1 record happened, like a minute break happened in Zelda 1, and I
Mm-hmm.
was really interested in making a video on that, so I just like hopped on that. And then while I was working on it, the Mario Kart 64 folks, I had been friend with Weatherton for many years.
Yeah.
And they approached me saying like, we have like a really crazy new find that I think it would be nice for you to make a video about it. And so like I kind of hopped on that afterwards. And so like kind of just like got delayed by other projects and eventually came out on in 2021. And then the 454 happened in SMB1, so that also delayed it further for like the next
Mm-hmm.
part. So like it took a while to get going. All in all, it took like 2.5 years from thinking about the project to actually finishing like the whole thing.
Uh huh. Yeah. Like, was it always the idea to um have this many videos, or at the beginning were you thinking, I'll just do it all in one video, or what?
It was definitely, well, the very first message to Pankook was a series. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew it was going to be several episodes. I knew it was going to be more than 2 hours, definitely, like from the start. That
Mm-hmm.
was assumed. My estimate was about 3 hours when I started, that like
Yeah.
the total length would be. And like my first part was really short. It was just 14 minutes just to lay the groundwork. And then I knew like I was really going to start when Pen and Code joined because
Mm-hmm.
that's like when it actually got like a little more organized and serious. And so basically from there, I looked at how the progression happened and I was like, I think I can cut that up in about 6 parts, which would be I'm hoping about half an hour each.
Mm-hmm.
And so part two, which is sort of like that part one of those 6 parts after like the sort of intro. That one came out to 49 minutes. So I knew I was not on good pace for
Mm-hmm.
like the half
Yeah.
hour parts. And so it just turned out that like every part was longer, like 37 minutes, 47 minutes, 45, 54 minutes. And when I got to the part 6, that's when I got to the point where I reached the moment in time where the challenge was when I started doing that series.
Mm-hmm.
But since I had started doing that series, a lot of developments happened.
Yeah.
What was supposed to be 3 hours turned out to be like 4, and then at that point I was done, but then I wasn't. So I had to
Mhm.
do two more parts on more stuff that had been found, which added another almost an hour and a half.
Mhm.
So the whole thing came out to 5 hours and 22 minutes
So
when the original estimate was 3.
so when you see that a new A press has been saved or something like that, is your reaction yes or is it oh?
I'd say it was definitely really exciting to see the uh, the first one was the what's it called? The ground pound. It's the squish cancel ground pound chain with the spinning pendulum and tick-tock clock. Like
Mhm.
that was the first one that like was found while I was working on it, and that was extremely exciting because that was a wild strat.
Yeah.
But then when like yeah, it was definitely more exciting than discouraging. But the lethal lava land one that was found the last involves like a bully going into parallel universes and like
Yeah.
warping back and forth with 100,000 speed, and then
Mhm.
like using that to like and then squish cancel to warp to a PU, and like a really crazy thing. And that was like, okay, that is like really really interesting to talk about, but also like that's gonna be rough. It's gonna
Yeah.
take like
Uh-huh.
20 minutes. And
Yeah.
when like the stomp on the thwomp, like the squish cancel ground pound chain was like reused like 30 times in a single star to like create this insane like gauntlet of like placing an item and placing a clone, going back down, going to use it, placing another clone further up the clock, going back down, going back up, and just like doing this back and forth 30 times to set up the clones and items needed to ascend up the clock all the way up in
Mhm.
zero A presses. Like once that was fully realized, I was like, holy shit, I'm never going to be finished with this
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
Like this is actually going to be a nightmare to talk
Uh-huh.
about. So like that was a little bit of it, but mostly it was really exciting to see that unfold. I was as I was working on the series.
Yeah. Like, have you from what I remember, you if I remember correctly, at the end of your series, you said something like you put getting past the not flagpole, getting past the pole as being likely, and then everything else varied from unlikely to not happening, basically.
Hmm.
Um, do you do you still stand by that? Do you think basically there's going to be just one more thing that's going to happen, and that's basically it?
Well, I feel like not much would really truly surprise me.
Uh huh.
But I still stand by it. Like there was one that I marked as like not very likely. I think it was like
Was
the
that the Jolly
likely.
Roger Bay one?
Yeah, it was like the likeliest of the unlikely ones,
Mm-hmm.
and that one like was found like I don't know 3 or 4 weeks later, maybe a couple months.
Yeah.
So I guess like that one, I kind of looked like a little bit silly about it, but also like what was found about it was just like kind of really novel and thought not to be possible and
Mm-hmm.
also barely worked. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just like one of those things where until you find it, you don't know where it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like it had potential. It's just like everything seemed also like it had been exhausted. So yeah, it's just one of those things where like you have to go off like the potential. Um, you have to go like off the potential that you
Yeah,
can
yeah, of
have
course,
in
yeah.
that level. And there's just some levels where like that potential is almost non-existent. So
Mm-hmm.
you just have to be like at that point, like what can you even do? Like if there's like the all the crazy strats in the EBC are always like in levels where you have the potential to do it. Like you have all the enemies, bob-ombs, objects, like geometry, fun stuff you can work with.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're doing like Princess Secret Slide, where like the star is just too high to reach it, and you're in that giant square room with nothing,
Mm-hmm.
then like what are you gonna do? Like you're not gonna just invent magic, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you believe in the I don't know what you call it. Oh, the perfect SMB1 run?
I don't. Hmm. I'd say I still don't fully believe in a humanly done perfect SMB1 speedrun, but I strongly believe that 454.3 will happen.
Uh huh.
It's just I think the real-time record will come short of the task by at most maybe 6 or 7 frames, and as little as like I don't want to say one. I'd say as little as like 2 or 3
Mm-hmm.
probably. It's just like there are a couple of frames that are so hard to save that I just don't imagine it
Mm-hmm.
happening like on top of everything else.
Would that be like the first room in particular?
Yeah, the first room is definitely one, and then also I think there's like the turnaround room or like the flying cheaps. There's like a
Mm-hmm.
turnaround setup where you have to do like double fast accelerations just to save that one extra frame.
Mm-hmm.
So like I feel like it's definitely viable to actually do like the perfect like normal turnaround room that's like a frame slower than that task.
Mm-hmm.
But then like to actually have like that crazy extra hard thing that save that extra frame on top of everything else, it's like kind of hard to believe that would actually happen. But I honestly think that Nifsky will get 454.3 at some point
Mm-hmm.
and be like a handful of frames from the task.
Uh-huh, okay. And TAS is it for 4.26? Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
454.265 is the
Uh-huh, okay.
task.
Yeah.
And it used to be 0.28, but then one extra frame, that turnaround frame I was talking about, the turnaround room
Mm-hmm.
extra frame, is the last frame that was found in the RTA rules task in 2018.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, so yeah, the task, the task is 0.26, and I think it's probably going to be somewhere around like 0.31 to 0.38, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Mm-hmm.
expect would probably be the final resting place of the 80% record.
Uh-huh, okay.
I feel like once, like, what I hope happens, well, hope, what I think will happen is like Nifsky is, I know he wants to go for it, the 454.3,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he will eventually get it. And I think once he's fully satisfied and like hangs up his keyboard and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like no longer goes for the SMB1 record,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the energy required to top that run at this point is so high that it's going to discourage pretty much everyone to go for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I would not be surprised if Nifsky is the final record holder at SMB1, just like from like sheer like nobody wants to touch that
Do you
record
think
if it's
so? Do you
that
think so?
good.
Like, I feel like I've heard that so many times, and like I'm always like, I'm always in a position where when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't know. I've stopped having the confidence to think, ah, yeah, no one's gonna top that because
Hmm.
I've just been proved
Yeah, I
wrong too
get
many
that.
times.
I would certainly not be like shocked, I guess, if it happened down the line. But
Mhm.
I do think that like it kind of depends on like what frame he ends on. Like if he's like 6 or 7 frames off, then I think yeah, someone will come back later, like maybe in 3, 4 years, and actually like
Yeah.
go for it and beat it.
Yeah. That
But
kind of time frame would make sense.
if he's like 2 to 4 frames off the task, I'm like, ugh, I really can't imagine anyone would go through the trouble of beating that
Uh
by
huh.
like 1 frame. Because like the just like when you get to the point where you reach 8-4 tied with the task,
Mhm.
and you already have like a fast 8-4 with like fast accels and so on. You're like something like 20 frames maybe from the task.
Mhm.
From that point, like you're already at the point like that almost nobody has ever done, right?
Yep.
And then you have to like each incremental frame that you save from that is exponentially harder.
Mhm.
So like the difference between a low 454.3 and a high 454.3 is
Mhm.
probably as large as the difference between a high 454.3 and like a 454.5 or 6.
Mhm.
And that is bigger than the difference between a 454.6 and a 455.
Yeah.
And which is bigger than the difference between a 4, like
Mhm.
it's just
Mhm.
like every like incrementally smaller time save is
Yep.
incrementally harder to get. So
Mhm.
like all those like tiny little frames in like when you're getting to like single digit frames away from the task
Mhm.
are exponentially harder. So that's why I think like there's actually a big difference between Nifsky stopping at like 7 frames off the task versus like 3.
Mhm.
Like there's actually a giant difference. You
Yeah.
can almost think of it as like not like how fat, like not the actual time of the run, the actual time between that and perfection. And
Mhm.
thinking like 6 frames off and 3 frames off, like the one that's 3 frames faster is literally a speedrun that's twice as good,
Uh huh.
even
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
it's only 0.05 faster, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
So that's why I think like it actually depends on if it's a high point 0.3 or a low point 0.3.
Mhm. So I guess you would hope that it's going to be a high point three because then that will actually not not discourage um, new players severely enough to stop them from potentially going for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the final resting place of SMB1 and 8% like human runs is 454.31 or 33 or 35.
Mhm.
Actually, maybe 34 it would be, whatever.
Yeah. Uh huh.
So like one of those like low point 0.3 decimals, I think is where the limit is going to be.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah. So I mean, the part of me that um, protests against that idea is just this. Like, so I get what you mean. Like, so I don't know. I'm a pretty average speedrunner. I don't have anything particularly wonderful, but when I feel like I've speedrun enough to have an idea of like where these kinds of records lie and the number of hours that it'll take and the like focus, concentration, discipline, and good practice habits that all this is gonna take. And like when I think about these kinds of records, like I feel like physically tired. Like when I think about like what it's gonna take. But
Yeah.
but the thing about that is that like I think I haven't even played Super Mario Brothers, and I think that just because like I've started with like Darbian was my starting point, right? And I can see where we've come since then. But the only thing that makes me protest against what you're saying is that new players and especially younger players they don't have that idea. For them, they view like they have as little idea as how good Nifsky is as I had when I was viewing Darbian for the first time. For them, that's just the record, and they don't
Hmm.
have this kind of sense of oh my god, like the amount of effort it took to get from there to there is like so crazy. They just see here and then they just see the end. It's like oh right, well I guess this is where we are and this is the space that we've got to close, right? That's the only bit of me that kind of protests against that. So I don't know
If I
what you think about that.
Well, if I may counter that, I think that somewhere in the 4,000 hours it would take them to reach that level, I think they would start to get that idea.
Yeah. True. But I would say that that would potentially be the new normal. As in, if you ask someone, in the era when Andrew G was getting sub 5 minutes, like I don't know, let's say it would take like hundreds of hours rather than thousands of hours. If you ask them, oh, is anyone gonna get like 455, 454, they'd be like, nah, dude, like that would take like thousands of hours and no one's gonna do that. But then people did. People put in the effort because they knew that was what was gonna take. Whereas I feel like it's the hardest part is to overcome the expectation. If you expect something, you've grown up with something taking hundreds of hours. It's that much harder to be like, right,
Yeah.
well, it's in the thousands now. Whereas if you know it's going to be like from the get go, you don't have those expectations to be confounded and frustrated.
Yeah, it would definitely take someone special, I think, to
Yeah.
because I honestly believe that Nifsky is one of the best speedrunners ever in terms of like how he approaches the speedrun.
Mhm.
He has an unbelievable work ethic. He practices like several hours per day. Probably not like anymore, but he practiced like several hours per day of just practice, like save state, doing the
Mhm.
same like 10-second section like over and over and over and over. Not until he would get it,
Mhm.
until he would never fail at it.
Mhm. Right.
And
Right.
that's
Right.
I think like the really big distinction of like he would just like become so consistent. Like the second he starts doing runs,
Mhm.
you know he's getting the record. Like
Really
of
interesting.
any category in SMB1 or SMB2J, which are really similar games.
Mhm.
The second that Nifsky goes live with a world record attempt stream, you
Mhm.
know he's getting a world record. Like
But
he's
because
just getting it today.
because he's already practiced it to within an inch of its life.
Yeah, he's already practiced every single section so much that when like any top level runner would be like 25% consistent at like some flag book glitch or some trick like
Mhm.
25 to 50% maybe. So you're like if there are like 7 of those tricks in the run, you have like let's say a 50-50 chance of getting each. You're
Mhm.
like 1 in 128 attempts would get that run. Like
Yeah.
but if Nifsky is playing with like 75 to 80% odds on those tricks,
Mhm.
we're no longer talking about 1 in 125, 28. We're not talking about like, 1 in 5, 1 in 10 would get it.
Mhm.
So like that's the thing with him. Like he gets so incredibly consistent at those hard tricks that like it just becomes almost automatic that he nails the things that everyone else would reset
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And he just got that through an in, an insane amount of very, very focused and very, very disciplined practice
Uh-huh.
that I have almost never seen from anyone.
Does he do all this practice like on stream or like off stream?
I think he practiced on stream a little bit more when he was like starting out, but
Uh-huh.
I think nowadays he does most of his practice off stream. But
Uh-huh. Okay. Uh-huh.
like he used to go for a lot of these like milestones of like getting like a specific frame rule, like a specific hard trick like from a safe state that's like increasingly further back, I guess,
Mhm.
like from like right at this point getting that really insane thing and then like move the safe state back to like at some earlier point in the level to do
Yeah.
like to chain like two tricks together and then
Mhm.
move all the way back to the starter level and like just like the full level like task match or something like
Mhm.
in 4-2 with the matching the task on that frame roll like he did that in increments like that.
Mhm.
So he was streaming those, but I feel like generally I don't think he streams his practice that much anymore. So
Mhm.
when he goes live, it's usually world record attempts, and it's he has a ridiculous consistency at going live with world record attempts and getting that world record that same day.
Yeah. 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 If I remember correctly, I can't. I'm not sure about the video. I remember the comment. I'm not sure exactly what video it was. I have a feeling it might have been Cosmic's video, like this speedrunner is too good.
hmm
I have a feeling like you left a comment where you said something like, what marks both Suiji and Nifsky out is their like
Yeah.
practice discipline.
hmm
And so would you say Suiji falls into that category as well?
Yeah, I think that amount of dedication and work ethic is also what makes Suigi like such a god of the short SM64 categories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like it's just a shame, I guess, that applying that same approach to 120 star burnt him out because it's
Oh,
so
I wasn't
intense.
aware of that.
Well, I don't think I don't know if he's like fully burnt out, but I know like he's been taking like medium to long breaks from the game
Mm-hmm.
after doing like a ton of 120 star practice, just
Uh-huh.
feeling a little burnt
I
out
mean, yeah,
about it.
it makes sense because like I know that part of the I mean, one, I guess he's got to like I don't know if this is maybe harsh, but like he's got to maybe learn to lower his standards, I suppose.
Yeah.
With that, which I can imagine could be difficult for someone like of that kind of mindset. I mean, I obviously,
Mhm.
I don't know him. I don't know enough about him to say that, but that's like a guess. And also the fact that once you get to Tippy, you've still got like a massive chunk of time that you've got to like fight against your nerves. And
Mhm.
whereas on his short runs and even on the 70 star run, that wasn't the case as much. It's kind of you kind of flow from one end to the other. Whereas
Yeah.
the reason why there's always a massive time loss on 120 stars is just because just having your nerves just shredded for that amount of time is just like a completely different skill set.
Yeah, it takes a mental fortitude that not everyone has.
Uh-huh, yeah, yeah, and a specific type of mental fortitude as well. Because I'm sure Suiji's got a type of mental fortitude that some people don't have, but it's like a completely different skill set, I would say, to
Yeah. Yeah, I
120.
would agree with that.
Mm. Do you believe in the Suigi 5 out of 5, or do you think that ship has sailed now?
I don't think the ship has sailed, but I think I definitely think that he missed a golden window for it, but I don't
I
think
agree.
it's over.
Hmm. Like,
Um, but I like obviously I can't blame him at all because like going for 5 out of 5 is just an insane like
yeah.
that would be an insane achievement
Hmm.
in the game. Like I feel like in almost any game, it's a really big achievement in itself, but in
Hmm.
SM64 of all games to try it in, it's like almost unthinkable.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Um, I, I definitely agree with. I mean, I don't know. I would have to ask one of the top SM64 runners, but I really felt like carpetless being discovered when it was an absolutely enormous opportunity.
Hmm.
Because I was almost thinking to myself, oh man, if he gets it. So I'm one of these people who, whenever an amazing feat happens in sports, unless it's like so magnificent as to be beyond reproach, I'm like, ah, yeah, but like they didn't do this or they didn't do that or something like that. Like, I don't know when I don't know if you're into like you're into like football at all. Like, so you know, I don't know if you know that like Messi finally won the World Cup like a couple of years ago. Were you aware of that?
I don't really follow that sport much, so
Okay,
no.
fair enough. So you're aware that Lionel Messi is a football player, right?
I'm aware that he exists, yes.
Okay, right. And so like he's kind of like the best, known as like the best player like, of his generation, and he
I think he
after
plays in North America now, right?
yeah, exactly. But you know the World Cup is so special because you know it's only once every 4 years. So he
Yeah.
played in 2006, didn't win it. 2010 didn't win it. 2014 didn't win it. 2018 didn't win it, and he finally won it at the fifth attempt in 2022. So that was a massive deal, right? But
Hmm.
for me, when I watch it, I still remember that basically like there was a French player who was through on goal in the last minute and basically flubbed with a chance. Basically, that doesn't matter now because everyone just remembers that Messi won it. But I'm thinking like, ah, yeah, but you know, I'm that kind of guy. Like I remember those kind of like little details. So the reason I bring this up is because I remember when Carpetless came out, I was thinking like, I was a little bit deflated because I thought, well, it's a new trick that saves a ton of time. Suigi is potentially the best at learning new tricks. So if he does it this way, on the one hand, yeah, of course he deserves it. Anyone who gets 5 out of 5 deserves it. But I kind of wanted to see him, you know, going toe to toe against Cheese and Simply and Ouija, you know, on their terms and seeing if he could like rise above, you know. So
Hmm.
in that respect, I felt like Carpetless coming out was like such a golden opportunity because like I think he's probably the fastest at learning new tricks, and it came out at exactly the right time for him
I
to.
think it actually came out too early
Oh,
because
you think so?
he wasn't ready to run 120 star at
Right.
that time.
Uh
He was
huh.
still like basically starting like all of his practice. So he probably could have gotten like he probably could have done like a week of runs and gotten like a 138 or 139
Mhm.
maybe,
Mhm.
but he wasn't like close to that level just yet. He needed to brush up on a lot of like all of the stars that aren't in 70.
Uh
He
huh.
needed to learn basically from scratch.
Right.
So
Mhm.
I think it came out like a month too early for him to actually have a shot at the record with it.
True.
But
True.
yeah,
True.
I
True.
think like definitely like the end of 2023 was really quite a wild time for 120 star.
Yeah. 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 Mm. So, but you still think you still think he can do it? You were
Yeah,
saying.
I think he can still do it. It basically just comes down to if he feels like he still has that fire in him. Because I feel like
Mhm.
um, I don't like I'm not like a close friend of his, but I met him at Pace and we've talked a little bit since, and I watched the streams and so on. But I think that he's definitely I know he's having controller issues and he had hand pain. So like those things will definitely like throw a wrench in your fire and motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe like there's no telling like when he feels like going back to the shape that he had at some point,
Mhm.
and if he ever comes back to just like that like astronomical level.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think if he does, then he can definitely take the 5 out of 5 again.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if his 1435 stayed as the 16 record for at least another year, maybe even two.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Um, I think some of his like 1 star and 0 star records are also extremely strong. So
Yeah.
like I wouldn't be surprised if he came back like in a year and he still had 3 out of 5. So
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Would you say that Nifsky and Suiji are on a kind of different tier to everybody else? Was there anyone else you say falls into that category?
I think, well, I don't know all of speedrunning, obviously.
Yeah.
There are many like big communities that I have zero interested in, and I've like, like Super Mario Odyssey was really big in speedrunning when it came out, and
Hmm.
I paid zero attention to
Uh
it.
huh.
So like
Yeah. Me too.
there's definitely like huge chunks that I could be missing of like prodigies and people who are
Hmm.
like extremely dominating with who have like that same level of like intense practice that's like extremely focused and extremely efficient practice,
Hmm.
and they just like dominate the field through that. But like as far as I know, those two are just like on in their own class in terms of like
Hmm.
how to get good at the game, like do what they do because that works.
Yeah. 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 That makes sense. Would you think you'd be able to separate the two? Like, is there anything that you can think of that makes you think you would give an edge to one or the other?
Well, it's just really hard to compare them, but I think overall Nifsky is even more dominating than Suiji is.
Hmm.
And I feel like there was an SMB1 tournament at Pace in summer 2023 that was kind of an eye opener because a lot of people would kind of criticize how Nifsky plays on keyboard as it being
Yeah. Yeah.
easier
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
as, valuable as playing on NES controllers.
Hmm.
But at that event, he was playing on CRTs, on NESs with a real physical controller, no
Hmm.
keyboard whatsoever. And there was the LTA event where you just like it's a lifetime attack. You just go for the record, like
Hmm.
the fastest time you can get within a set amount of time, which was really short for SMB 190%. It was 1 hour.
Hmm.
So you have 1 hour. You just get the fastest run possible. The event starts. Everyone just does a first run, and then gotta set a first time and try to beat that. Most runners go for like a 458, which when you're a top runner, that's a pretty safe bet. Like no flagpole glitches, no like there's just like a one easy wall clip and like the wall jump in 8-4. So it's a relatively I think you don't even go for the wall clip actually in
Hmm.
4-2. So it's a really relatively like trick-free run that you just like get a really clean run, and most people can usually get it within a few attempts at the top level.
Hmm.
So, like most of everyone is just going for that. Nifsky goes for 456 and gets it.
Hmm.
First run of the day.
Wow.
And so everyone has like 458, 459, 5 minutes or something. He sets 456 first run. Then he has like 102 early resets. About 2 minutes later, he starts another attempt, get 455.8 or something.
Hmm.
This is already like, this is already better than the PB of half the people playing at that event.
Wow.
He took like basically 2 attempts to do it.
Hmm.
And then like 20, 30 minutes later, he gets a mid 455. And I believe that second place was a mid or a low 457 that
Uh
day.
huh. Okay. Wow.
So his very first run just won
Hmm.
straight up. And then he improved it by over a full second. And nobody ever came close.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
So that's what I'm thinking of when I say like domination. Like he is just on another level in an extremely competitive game.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
I think
feel
that
like
makes sense.
if you gave Squeegee that same setting with like maybe 0 1 star or 16 star, I feel like yes, he would have come out on top, but
Hmm.
not in such a dominating way that you're like the very first run of the event, it's already decided. Like
Hmm.
just only
Yeah.
Nifsky could do that,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like.
It's basically a competition for second place before it's even begun.
Yeah, it's just
Hmm.
like first run, Nifsky gets the record. All right, the event is over. Now let's see who gets a 457.
Uh huh. Yeah. 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 Well, would you say that you think that the SMB1 scene is as competitive as the SM64 scene?
Well, I think nowadays maybe it isn't so much, but it definitely used to be very close. Nowadays I feel like SMB1 kind of cooled down a little bit, but maybe it's
Hmm.
just because I don't follow it as closely.
Yeah, like I
But there are like several people with 454s now, so.
because with SMB1, I always got the impression it's just like one person dominates and another person dominates and another person dominates and another person dominates. Whereas with SM64, especially like 120, I always kind of like I'd say Cheese is probably the closest person that I would say like was truly dominant. Um, and I don't know, I whenever I see a new record coming in, I kind of be like, that's awesome. But Cheese is the only one who I can think of. Oh, he did it again and again and again, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so
Siglevic had his time, but yeah,
true, true, true,
otherwise.
true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah. Um, um, oh yeah, and this was something I wanted to. I wanted to ask you about, and I completely forgot. Is that so? I asked you earlier about your background in computer science, and you said that your background is not in computer science, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, I guess a lot of people like would expect me to be kind of a computer science enthusiast and if not like a genius, but I'm actually like really bad at it. I'm like a complete beginner coder and I don't know why, it just never really clicked with me for some reason. Like I can understand it. I can usually like parse code and understand what's going on a lot of the time. But it's just like I feel like whenever I get to writing new code, I'm always like lost as to what I should be doing.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
So yeah, I guess I'm just not like that great at it, and
Mhm.
it's fine. And I've learned on my own a little bit since like school. Um, so I'm not like completely clueless anymore, and I've done like animations for like the latest GoldenEye video was a lot of like Python animations. So like
Mhm.
I worked with Python quite a bit for that video. So like I'm definitely like starting to become like half decent,
Mhm.
and I can like learn on my own and not need like hand holding so much. So I guess I'm getting there, but
Mhm.
definitely not like a master programmer or
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah, yeah. But your real background is in mathematics.
Mhm. The My initial goal was to become a math teacher, but I dropped out of university after like hitting a brick wall where I found out that you actually have to work to learn
Uh
things.
huh.
And
Yeah,
I
because
spent like the whole of
sorry, yeah, yeah.
I spent like the whole of high school just like breezing through everything and not needing to work. And I know like this is the story of a lot of people, and I'm not like
Mhm.
special for it. But when I reached college, that's when like the I forget what the name of the class is in English, but like when you do integrals in with calculus. So like the part of calculus where I
Well, I mean,
reached,
like, I thought it was just called integral calculus, right?
yeah, probably.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like the when I reached like integration and like all the different methods to do it and all that like nonsense of like knowing exactly what to do when and why and so on. That like was when my intuition completely like fell off a cliff and
Mhm.
I could never understand anything just by thinking about it. I guess I had to like drill into my brain by like just doing it over and over.
Mhm.
And I just found that I didn't have the willpower to do that.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just fell out of school that way. And so I guess like my intention of becoming a math teacher kind of just like disappeared at that moment.
How
But I
was
kind
that?
of
How
found
was
it
that, by
back.
the way? Like, how did you cope with that? Were you one of these people who you kind of uh, based at least some part of your identity in your like ability to just like intuit these kinds of things, or was it not like that for you?
Yeah, I'd say that was true in high school for sure. I was definitely like when I was in elementary school and high school, I was definitely like the math prodigy. Like everyone knew about how good I was at math and how I could just do anything in my head and
Hmm.
all that stuff. Like I could just like do like, an an hour long exam, I could generally be done within less than 20 minutes and have like 100% or close to.
Yeah.
So that was like when I was in high school. And then I guess I kind of kept that a little bit when I started going into college, but like quickly just like it vanished as soon as like I started like realizing that I got to the point where I needed to put in the work and I couldn't.
Mhm.
I realized that that made me below average, and
Mhm.
so that like just quickly vanished. But I
Mhm.
guess I didn't have too much trouble coping with that. I guess it's just I kind of had more trouble coping with like what I was gonna do if that was not gonna be it, and it took me a few
Yeah.
years, I guess, to sort myself out.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, you were saying that. Oh, I like the way you put it, in that you said, "Oh, in order to be able to do this, I needed to be able to put in effort, but I couldn't." Um, like, do you feel like that was simply? Do you feel like that was a case of the habit being simply too ingrained, or was it just a case of like, I don't know, you weren't that interested in it if you weren't able to just do it very quickly and easily?
Well, it's just yeah, it's really ingrained habit and just not learning. I feel like learning proper work ethic is really important when you're young because it's a lot harder when you're older.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like I'm just a really lazy person. I'm
Mm-hmm.
extremely lazy and I procrastinate as much as I can physically do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is actually like I feel like if I had been like a really productive and, you know, hardworking person, I could probably I could probably make about twice the content on YouTube that I'm actually making.
Uh-huh.
The big thing stopping me from uploading more than 6 videos a year is myself.
Uh-huh.
Just
Okay.
struggling to work efficiently and consistently for long periods of time. I can do it for like a week or two if I'm really like zoned in on something. I can even get like up to a month of like working on a video really hard and making like a ton of progress and getting a lot of work done.
Mm-hmm.
But like I get these periods where like just thinking about working is like, oh, I don't want to do it. And I just never get started on anything.
Uh-huh.
Once I get started, usually I'm better. But if I don't get started, I can take like days and days and days and even weeks sometimes of getting almost zero progress just because I'm procrastinating my time away.
But like, what are your biggest time sinks when it comes to procrastination?
Uh, it's not great. It's
Uh-huh.
just like, you know, refreshing some like the same websites over and over and like
Uh-huh.
YouTube and Twitch and
Mm-hmm.
Twitter. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really not great. Although like lately I've actually not done that so much anymore. I've done just like other things instead, which aren't necessarily better for
Okay.
productivity.
Right. Okay.
But but yeah, it's just yeah, it's generally not time that I'm proud on spending and
Uh-huh.
you know, it's a process. It's something that I have to work on. I have to work on myself, I guess, to get out of it.
Have you ever tried like internet blockers or anything like that?
I haven't actually. And you know, one big reason why it's kind of difficult is that I work from home on the same computer that I use for everything,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that I know doesn't help. And I have sometimes moved my computer to like uh, places of like friends or family for like a week, just
Mm-hmm.
like be at their place, and they would usually work during the day, so I would just like work at their place, and then during the night and weekends I could do other stuff, and that usually was pretty good at keeping me focused. So
Uh-huh.
like
That's cool.
like usually like changes of an environment and like other stuff like that does help a little bit, but it usually mostly boils down to like how focused and enthusiastic is not quite the word I was looking for, but how engaged I am in the project, like
Mm-hmm.
how invested I am in like seeing it like go through.
Mm-hmm.
And the early stages of a video are always the hardest, where it
Oh,
feels like
100%, 100%,
the
dude. Yeah.
mountain of work left is insurmountable.
Uh-huh.
But like usually once I really get into the editing and I get into a groove, I
Mm-hmm.
can start like getting like 3 minutes done a day. And so like if I do like 5, 6 days a week of 3 minutes a day, I can just like get the whole thing done in 2 or 3 weeks of editing.
So,
So
so,
like that gets really motivating.
I don't know. I don't know if you're similar, but for me, I feel as though the best way I can describe the times when being productive is most difficult is what you might call like transition periods. So it's like when I'm kind of coming into a new project and I've got to like get myself into gear and like get all of this energy that's not being used for anything and like putting it into this, like that transition period is like by far the most difficult time
Yeah.
in the period. And then, but although conversely, it could be the opposite as well. As in, like if I'm like well into a project and I'm like so hyper focused on it, but there is a commitment that I've got that I ought to be doing, then I also have a problem, taking the effort out again and then putting it elsewhere. So I find
Hmm.
it's those transitions that are the most difficult part. So I don't know if it's the same for you or if you feel like it's kind of different.
Well, I usually when I finish a project, my motivation is at an all-time high. I'm like, all right, now like I'm I'm dialed in.
Uh
Let's
huh.
go. So I usually I take a couple days break, and then I usually am able to start the next project like all guns
Oh,
blazing.
nice.
Let's
Cool.
go. Like
Cool.
we're diving into this phase first,
Mhm.
and then it takes like between 2 and 5 days for my motivation to just like fall off a cliff after
Well,
that.
yeah, because I guess you were absolutely you with the last project you would like sawed in all of those grooves already, so you were flying down like super fast. Whereas now you have to
Hmm.
start carving the new grooves, and it's like, oh my
Yeah.
god, this is so much effort.
Yeah, and it's like all of this knowledge that I've acquired on that last game just does not apply anymore.
Yeah,
I've learned to
absolutely.
work with these really specific tools that only work in SM64, and now I
Uh
have to
huh.
just do something else entirely.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's that kind of stuff that definitely like hurts the motivation. But
Mhm.
also like recording is the part that I hate doing the most because my first language is French, my second language is English.
Yeah.
So if I want to do like actually good voiceover with no like stumbling on my words or anything, I have to record every single sentence one by one,
Wow.
and I
Wow.
often need like several takes to get it right.
Mhm.
So that get like I feel like for someone like a native speaker could probably record 10 minutes of a script in like I don't know, an hour
Mhm.
maybe. But 10 minutes of a script for me would take me like maybe 4.
Yeah.
So like that like process is definitely harder. And you can probably hear by now that my voice gets tired quickly and it sounds not as good
Oh
after a
yeah,
while.
like you've got that kind of sexy gravel going on.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the that also like changes the quality of my voice really quickly, so I can't really do more than like an hour and a half
Yeah.
of recording per session. So like that part kind of is tedious because I can never do a lot of it at once, and I don't like doing it, and I don't like setting it up with the blanket and everything. So like all
Yeah.
of that is just like
Wait. Tell us about the blanket because you mentioned this to me before we
yeah,
started recording. But
yeah. I actually have a blanket just behind my screen that I just pull over like that when I'm recording.
dude, that's amazing. That's so
Not like
good.
that's not like the whole setup, but that is just like helps a lot with the echo, and it makes like the just sound quality so much
Yeah. I
better.
can hear it definitely.
But yeah, basically like setting that up can be a little annoying, and it's just like those extra steps to recording that are just like enough to make it that annoying part that I often want to put off.
Uh huh.
And then also like once I have to actually start the editing, that's really difficult because I feel like my vision isn't like dialed in yet on what I want to do, and I feel like the visuals I'm making are maybe not quite right, and I feel like just I'm not there yet. So
Mhm.
it really takes a while until I finally get into that mindset, and I'm really like ready to look at something and know exactly oh that's gonna like that's how I'm gonna do it, how it's gonna look like.
Mhm.
And oftentimes I go back to like once I'm almost done with the video, I go back to like the first 10 minutes of it, and I'm like I don't even remember doing this because I was doing it like editing like 20 seconds every 2 days or something. I feel like
Mhm.
everything is so deconstructed from each other. Then I look back at it and I'm like, okay, it's actually fine. It makes sense. But yeah, in the moment, it's like I did that section in such a long stretch of time that I'm kind of lost on the structure of it, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
When I get like more invested, I kind of get that like larger gist of the things a
The
little better.
flow.
So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, man. Mm, do you feel well? Presumably, at least you feel like it's got easier over time, or has it been the opposite because you've just got that much more ambitious that it just stays difficult?
Um, I'd say it's a healthy balance, but overall, the time I spend on each video has overall gone up
Hmm.
more than gone down. I certainly am better at it,
More
but
efficient.
also I have my standards are higher. Um, there's one video I made recently on Super Mario Brothers 2, which I actually managed to do in like 2 weeks.
Uh
So
huh.
I set myself that deadline before the holidays. I'm going to make that video. It's going to be lower effort. It's going to be kind of a little simpler, like fewer like crazy visuals, but it's like I can still make it a good video if I just do like these things and it's going to be fine. So I had that mindset from the get-go and I got through it really quickly and easily. But overall I usually have like this really like cool idea I want to do and like really like ambitious like in SM64 for the ABC series I did a lot of like custom camera work with like playing back to tasks and like just like using the tools to like move the camera around Mario to
Hmm.
show specific things and
Mm.
that took a lot of time to make,
Yeah, I
but
dare
I
say.
feel like the it was so important that I couldn't like just leave it out.
Hmm.
Like when I'm spending like 12 minutes to talk about 4 frames, like I gotta do something
Yeah,
visually
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, that's I guess like why like overall the time goes up because my standard go up faster than my skill does, I
Mm.
guess.
Would you say there's a particular video that stands out as being the one you're most proud of?
That's actually kind of hard to say. I think that different ones in my videos have like strengths and weaknesses. But generally, I definitely think that the one I'm most proud of is the history of the ABC
Hmm.
series. That's just like the sheer scale of it, and the I feel like the early parts kind of are a little weaker because I was still like getting my groove on, and the later parts are better made,
Hmm.
but also the later parts are so technical that you kind of lose the viewer at that point. So it's kind of
Hmm.
weird, but overall, like I'm extremely proud of that project because I feel like I did like the best I could
Yeah,
possibly
yeah,
do
yeah,
there.
yeah. I would agree with that definitely.
And otherwise, I'd say like the 454 video on SMB1, I think is really just great, but I don't have anything that stands out really well about it.
Hmm.
Uh, and like the one I made on Frigate with the odds of getting the hostages to escape fast enough, like that one I'm really proud of because the animations and like the statistical work and that stuff, like I was helped a whole lot by members of the elite, but I feel like that overall like I'm really happy with what I was able to do there and make like a topic that was basically just like GoldenEye was just the excuse to have like a probability lesson
Uh
essentially.
huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like what I was able to do with that was I'm really proud of that, but I wouldn't say that's the video I'm the most proud of. Maybe like actually the Zelda 1 video is overall my favorite because I that was the first one I was doing the piano for and I think it came out really well and I really like I feel like I really did a good job at making the run understandable for someone who's not really familiar with Zelda 1.
Hmm.
And I feel like it has a really nice and calming flow for all of it that like there's a really annoyingly at the very start of the video, there's like a 5 minute section that's really technical.
Hmm.
So that kind of might like turn off some viewers, but the rest of it is like really just like smooth sailing of cool information, like nicely brought up. I think that the visuals I made were really good. Like the music was really good, and like all the effort I put into like making the run easily understood with like the path that Lack Attack was taking, like everything he was doing in each room of the dungeon, like explaining, breaking down like the route he was taking in each dungeon and why. Like I feel like all of that stuff, I really nailed it in like bringing the run to a very understandable level, even
Hmm.
though like it's kind of a complex game. So I think overall the Zelda one video is my favorite.
Uh huh. Okay, interesting choice. Um, if that brings up a question. If you had to choose, uh, well, anyway, if you had to have a preference between, right, if after I make this video, people will either come away from this having enjoyed themselves but not actually understanding what I was saying, or understanding what I was saying but not necessarily being as entertained as they might otherwise have been.
I feel like I kind of alternate between the two. I
Mm-hmm.
I generally try to make like lighter videos from time to time and more technical videos from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like a mix of both. So I'm not sure which one I prefer, but I guess I would prefer entertainment over understanding,
Mm-hmm.
just because that means they're more likely to watch it back.
Right. Yeah. 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 True. 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 True.
But like in reality, I think my main goal is understanding, and
Mm-hmm.
entertainment is sort of like the second goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it's probably better for me if people don't understand it in the first go and they want to watch it again because they
Mm-hmm.
liked it so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, yeah, overall, like my actual goal is information first, entertainment second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, I think that makes perfect sense because I think even if someone understands it, if they're not engaged, then like they're not gonna like want to come back or engage with the community or get into the game potentially. I'm sure there's
Hmm.
plenty of people who like watched Pan and Cook's video for the first time and didn't understand everything on the first go, but have
Yeah.
subsequently got into the community and contributed stuff like that. So yeah,
Hmm.
that makes a lot of sense. Um,
And nowadays, I actually get a lot of people who credit me as the reason they got into speedrunning at all, which is really,
yeah, yeah.
flattering and really nice to know that I am a driving force for growing the speedrunning community, which is
Hmm.
something I would never have dreamed of being like 12 years ago.
Anybody famous that we would know of?
Hmm. I don't actually know. No, I don't think I could think of anyone like who's now like a top level runner,
Uh
but
huh. Oh, okay.
definitely like
Yeah,
a lot of like
yeah. I'm just asking. 'Cause,
yeah, definitely a lot of like the newer generation of SMB1 players for
mhm,
sure.
mhm.
Maybe a
That
bit
makes
of
sense.
SN64 as well.
Hmm. Well, you brought up Goldeneye, and then that was the last thing. We have. This is supposed to be a Goldeneye podcast, and we have spoken for
Right.
2 hours, and we have not yet spoken about Goldeneye. So,
Yeah.
how did the transition go from Pivot? Was it? Did you go directly from SM64 to Goldeneye, or was there something in between?
Well, I wouldn't say that I ever focused on a single game. I was kind of like, you know, always playing two or three at once. GoldenEye, I feel like I was never really like a serious runner of the game. I was always just like playing the levels to beat my own times and never like going for like the top level strategies or anything.
You got down
Like,
53, didn't you?
I did get them 53, yes.
Yeah.
There's a couple times that I got that are like, that at least were good for the time. Like I got Streets 114 and I got Dam 53 and I think I got 157 Streets Double O Agent
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, I think I got 158 SA and 157 Double O.
Mm-hmm.
And then like more recently I got a couple more like times that I find half decent.
Yeah.
I could list them. I have them here. I played like a little bit of Caverns Double O and got like a 350, I think it was, on like non-Japanese, so like no body armor
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got Caverns Double O Agent 350, and I got Frigate. When I was working on the video, I figured I'd play some Frigate, and
Mm-hmm.
I got 118 SA and 127 Double O. So like, I can play the game to a reasonably decent level. It's just like I usually don't get points.
Yeah. That's fair enough. So, I mean, this is a question. So, there's um, well, anybody not coming from Golden won't necessarily know this, but there's always this debate that like comes up every now and then about is Goldeneye like too optimized, and do we need to loosen the point system a bit to have like top 200 rather than top 100? As someone who is, I'd say, is probably more outside the community than in, do you have any thoughts about
Yeah,
that?
personally, I think that it would benefit the growth of the community to change the point system,
Okay.
but I personally don't care about it enough to like really advocate for it. But I've
Yeah.
spoken about it before that I think it would be a better idea to loosen it to more than 100.
Uh huh.
I think like probably 1,000 is probably too much, but it would future proof. But like even something like somewhere between like 2 and 500. I think would be a good number.
Okay.
And I think I think there's definitely a an argument for having maybe like a point system that goes up to 1,000, but only includes like 400 or 500 times, and have like a better curve that
Right.
like
Okay.
values the top times better. Because
Mhm.
like isn't it like 197 then 95 and then it's down one every position?
Yeah. That's right.
Which like at that point might as well not just not do it at all because it's so
Yeah.
like
I agree.
and like that was worth it when like you had like maybe like 10 people were close to the record and
Mhm.
like you had maybe like someone had it untied and then like two people in second place and then like you could have like a single person have a time. Nowadays
Mhm.
like that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel like that might just be better overall, but also like the point system is mostly used by the top players, so
Mhm.
and like it's not even like used by that many people in the first place. Like a lot of people just don't care about their points. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess like no system is perfect and everyone like will have different preferences, but
Mhm.
personally I think what I think would suit it best would be top like 400 500 players and have like a system that actually has a better curve to value the difference between the top times better.
Okay. But yeah, to go back to when you were first conceiving of doing a GoldenEye video, when was that kind of happening?
Well, I sort of always kept GoldenEye in the back of my mind as a potential game to cover. I don't know exactly when I really said like, oh, I'm gonna do that. I think like, well, the Silo DLTK was definitely something that interested me because it felt like one of the few speedruns of GoldenEye that was the right format for me to approach.
Mhm.
Because usually ILs are a little too short. So one IL would be like, I think I'd have trouble talking about it for more than like 15 minutes,
Mhm.
which I could do it, but it's kind of short.
Mhm.
And like usually I like the format. Sorry, I like the format where like there's a bit of the run that I can pause and I explain that part. Then
Mhm.
there's another bit of the run that I can pause and explain that part. There's no really good IL in GoldenEye where you can do that.
Mhm.
So Silo DLTK kind of made sense because that's like a much longer run and there's like a lot of like strategy and routing and like all the guard manipulation behind it was I found really interesting.
Mhm.
So that was kind of the I found like seemed like the best way to do a GoldenEye video in the
Mhm.
format that I usually make.
Mhm.
But I guess I kind of like got serious about doing it sometime in 2023, and I figured like I'd do it at some point. So I, after SM64, I guess that was just like the next project
Mhm.
on the list. And afterwards, I actually wasn't going to make two videos about it, about the game. I mean, and then
Mhm.
there was some like potential like sponsor deal for like two videos on the same topic or something, and I was like, ah, I guess I could do like two videos on GoldenEye back to back. That could be interesting, and
Mhm.
I could talk about like something else. And I was thinking about like the odds of Frigate Double O Agent. Like it
Yeah.
turned out that sponsor deal like fell through anyway, so it didn't matter. But I
Okay.
still had that idea in mind of like I could do like a second GoldenEye video on Frigate, and then I was like definitely interested in like talking about the math behind figuring out the Frigate odds.
Mhm.
And I knew like that the odds were like mostly kind of understood or like uh estimated pretty well, but not like very closely.
Mhm.
And sometimes like the estimates would vary between like a whole order of magnitude behind like some people would say, oh, it's a 1 in 1,000 run. Some people would say, oh, it's a 1 in 10,000 run or
Mhm.
something. We all knew like so the answer was somewhere in between. You just never know.
Yeah.
So I was like, I think there might be actual work to do there and like improve the knowledge. And so like I kind of brought this idea of like doing like a statistical analysis with empirical data as close as we can get it to actually like be just like it would be in a real run.
Mhm.
And so like I'm really lucky and I was looking for another word, but I'm really lucky that I got to do this with Sean John and Ace and sorry, I need to remember the other ones. Sean John and Ace
Runners
and
or scientists?
uh it was Weister, wait, no, that's not the
Ted.
one. Why do I forget? Yeah, Sean John, Onslaught, Ari, White Ted. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, right.
So, like Ted making that custom ROM hack to track all the hostage time escapes, and Onslaught working on the simulation, the Monte Carlo simulation,
Mm-hmm.
and Ace and Sean John doing like 200 trial runs on that ROM
Yeah.
hack. So like that, all of that work was all done by them. Like that's something that I could not have possibly done.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like really fortunate that I was able to work with them because the project would have been probably not even doable
Mm-hmm.
without like the amount of work that they put in. So like that was great, and I feel like overall it just like bettered the understanding and like the knowledge
Oh,
that
of
the
course.
whole
Yeah.
community had
Mm-hmm.
on that level. So like I feel like I like actually contributed something to the community as a whole, like
Mm-hmm.
not just like making a video talking about it. So that was a cool, like really nice project that I think was kind of the first time that I was like kind of furthering the understanding, not just like explaining what
Yeah,
was already
true.
known.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, but that's very true. Um, one thing that comes to mind, that, like, then this is just completely spitballing, is that like it strikes me that the progression of uh, DLTK levels being completed is actually quite similar to the A button challenge. I don't know. I don't know if you thought about that before and whether or not that would make. Again, this isn't. Don't take this as me being like, oh, you should do this, and then you have to be like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. But like, it strikes me that that could potentially be something that could be, I don't know, worth looking into, because like the
I feel
progression.
like it's maybe already been done by like one of the Speed Lore episodes, maybe. But
Possibly, but I'm sure. I'm sure you would definitely do a completely different job if you
mhm.
did it. But yeah, you are perhaps correct about that. I don't know. Something to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like generally speaking, I'm not like that interested in making history videos as
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
like explaining videos.
That's fair.
The ABC series was kind of a mix of both, but it was like I feel like it was about 15% narrative and 85% just break your brain madness.
True. True.
So that's like kind of what drew me into it was like I was gonna spend most of my time just explaining SM64 mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So
That makes
yeah,
sense.
I'm like I feel like I could get like decent storytelling videos. I just don't feel like I'm the best at it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Like if it's just not for you, and there's already like a ton of channels that do that already. So
Yeah.
what's your opinion on Abisoft, by the way? Because I've been watching his stuff recently. I've actually been really impressed.
Well, I'm gonna make a stunning revelation. I actually do not watch a lot of speedrunning content on YouTube.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I feel like I kind of don't do it out of just trying to respect others' work and not trying to draw from them and just doing my
Okay,
own thing.
all right.
So like I watched I'd say I watch about 2/3 of Summoning Salt's videos. And I watched like a little bit of Carl Jobs, but I feel like I haven't really watched most of his stuff in like a year or two.
Uh huh.
I watched a bit of Virtual's videos as well when he started blowing up.
Oh, the Trackmania stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I watched like maybe one or two Abisoft videos, but that was like a while ago, and I don't like I wouldn't know anything from his recent
Oh,
stuff.
okay. Because I remember in his in his Suigi video, he like specifically gave you a shout out. So I didn't know if like you to what
Yeah,
extent.
well, I was aware of that, but again, like I didn't watch the entire video. It's just like I guess I don't know. It's something I kind of fell into without really realizing it, and I was like, I think that's actually good that I do this, so I can
Yeah.
focus on what I do and not like if anybody accuses me of copying Abisoft, I'm like, I actually don't watch his videos,
Uh
so
huh.
it
Okay.
happened by accident.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. The way so I know. So I'll tell you the way I see it. The way I kind of see it is that you've got like I think you have like summoning salt at the bottom, which is like um, I don't know. Oh no, let's not put it at the bottom. Let's say you have entertainment here and information here. I think you got like summoning salt here, then probably Carl about here, then Abersoft about here, then you right up against this wall over here, I would
Well,
say.
you can actually break that wall and cover retro game mechanics explained, the ISO Freeze's channel.
Oh,
There's like
I haven't seen that one.
full full information. He actually, I look up to his stuff like a whole lot. He is incredibly talented and he makes amazing videos, but they are extremely technical. Usually,
Mm-hmm.
like diving into like the specific lines of code and
Uh-huh.
like the visuals and everything he does is like extremely high production value. Probably the highest in the whole speedrunning community. Like
Wow, okay.
he makes
Is
these
it speedrunning
excellent
focused or is
videos.
it more general than that?
I'd say it's a bit more general, but it definitely has some more speedrunning focused videos.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically, he used to speedrun SMW at a pretty high level,
Okay.
and he was always like one of the like scientists of that community, and so he knows a lot about hardware and software like
Mm-hmm.
combined. And the way like the thing I do sometimes, especially with like older games, where I can show information on screen that's like directly related to like in-game variables like speed and position and like moving stuff along with sprites and like combining like different footage with like moving sprites that like are from
Mm-hmm.
like different recordings but that match with like the screen scrolling and so on.
Mm-hmm.
All that kind of stuff is done using a Lua script that I like customize a little bit but basically starts from his work.
Yeah.
So like he wrote a Lua script that takes you can like feed it in memory addresses and it gives you like After Effects keyframes of like all of those variables changing along with the video that you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can feed that into After Effects with like expressions and so on and like move stuff on screen along with those. So like all of that stuff that I'm doing is because he already blazed that trail in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
I really like credit him for like how good my production value has gotten because his is like 10 times better.
Okay. And what's the name of this channel? Sorry.
The name of the channel is Retro Game Mechanics Explained, or
Okay.
like
Cool.
RG MechX for short. And it's ISO Freeze, the name of the runner who he used
Cool.
to go by Dots Are Cool. Now he goes by ISO Freeze
Uh
for a
huh.
couple. He
Uh-huh.
has gone for ISO Freeze for a couple years.
Okay. Alright. Um, how long did the Sala DLTK video take you? Because I mean, I would imagine it was probably not as long as the A button challenge.
Yeah, well, I'd say generally it's about 2 months per video. Like, be it like a ABC part or like any main video I make, it's about 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of hours, it's ranging between like 150, 160, and close to 300.
Uh-huh.
Usually it's somewhere in the low 200 hours range, but I don't count it very accurately. But it's yeah, somewhere like 250 hours is generally a good like estimate of how long it took me in total from like first research to
Mm-hmm.
upload.
And for the uh, can you tell me roughly the kind of chronology about the frigate video? Like, um, who, like, how much of the idea of what actually ended up happening in the video was already fleshed out by the time you contacted people, or was that like an ongoing process that developed over time?
Well, the general idea of trying to figure out the odds using empirical data was basically the whole basis of it. I
Uh
was
huh.
like, I asked like Whitehead and Ace and like Onslat, like, is this feasible? And if yes, like, I want to make a video on it,
Mm-hmm.
basically. Because if it wasn't, then I didn't think I would have enough material
Yeah.
to work on it. So yeah, that was basically like the main idea was basically already there from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it wasn't, then there would have been no video.
Uh huh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And then just the runners just like got to work and just gave you like all the data that you needed. I have to say
Yeah.
that is, you said that you feel lucky about that. I have to say, I'm so impressed. I know Sean John very well, and like I know Ace not that well, but like I've definitely spoken to him like a reasonable number of times. I'm so impressed by the level of effort that they put in. Like uh, I don't know. When I saw that was happening like in the video, like, I was blown away. I thought that this is so cool that they've actually done this. So I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing was really exciting, and I felt blessed to have that much data to work with,
Uh
and
huh. Yeah.
I feel like the outcome, like it basically was like exactly what I was going for. I feel like the conclusion I think is quite solid, like as solid as you can get it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like that's uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, we're definitely not gonna get any more accurate than that anytime soon. Like, yeah, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I guess the only like slight downside, I guess, is like since it was mostly focused on figuring out the odds for like a time around like 105 and lower,
Mm-hmm.
anything that could not possibly get a 103 was already discarded. So like
Yeah.
all the escape points that were too slow, but that would work for like if you wanted to get 106, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So the calculation like quickly break down as you go below like or over like 104.
Mm-hmm.
So like 105 and higher, it's not accurate anymore
Mm-hmm.
because you get like more odds of getting it.
Yeah.
But also, like, if you're going for a 106, generally you're not going to play at a 103 pace. So, like, also that kind of plays into it as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so I kind of wish that I was able to get like a full picture of like, here are the odds of the hostage escaping by this time, like a full like curve from like 58, 59 seconds all the way up to like 140 or whatever the highest is.
Yeah.
And like if you play at like a really good level, this is what you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
But like I wasn't able to actually get that out of it, but in the end it doesn't really matter that much because like I said, like anyone who's like interested in knowing the odds of like a 115 or a 110, they're not going to play at a 103 pace anyway. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
what good is it going to be for them anyway? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 That makes sense. Mm. And you mentioned earlier about the or having done the piano for all of these various stuff. How long have you been playing the piano, by the way?
well, I've been playing for 21 years now,
Mm-hmm.
so like I started when I was 9.
Uh huh.
Um but I only took lessons for about 4 years, maybe 5. Yeah, I think 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of just like kept my same technical ability, but just like kept like learning new songs. And
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of in a weird place where my technical ability is really rusty and not that great. But as I've aged, I've become like a better musician in
Mm-hmm.
general, just
Mm-hmm.
like, I understand the music better. So like I feel like now I'm kind of like in a kind of odd spot where I can make good music, but I kind of maybe have to cheat a little bit to achieve some of the more difficult songs, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like recording it slower and speeding up the because I recorded on a MIDI keyboard, which I can then play back using different sounds.
Sneaky, sneaky.
So like I can do like multiple recordings and layer them and then
Mm-hmm.
like fix whenever they're not like quite lining up
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
precisely. It was just like adjust the timing of the notes a little bit. So like that's the kind of stuff I do to get the music done because like there sometimes like it's just like a straight recording and it's like one like full take for the whole song and it's just like me playing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like a third of it is that. But then like for the more complex stuff, usually it's done like two layered recordings and then like I just adjust the note timings a little
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I just like will like record slower so I can like I don't have to spend like 2 weeks learning it. I can just like learn the basis and it sounds good when you speed it up, so that's
Uh-huh,
good
yeah.
enough for me. So like I can do a bit of these tricks, but yeah, like usually if I there's a song in the video, I can play it to some reasonable degree.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sometimes like there are like four hands at once, so I can't like have to pick and
Yeah,
choose.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Have you released your arrangements as sheet music?
sometimes a little bit, but usually I just don't make sheet music because it's really time consuming to make
Oh,
that.
okay. Yeah, fair enough.
And so, yeah, I like sometimes I will make sheet music, but usually I don't really. So I just like release it on my music channel, and if the sheet music looks good, I'm gonna include it.
Mm-hmm.
So I capture like when I play it back, I capture the like the my MIDI software, like just playing the sheet music and highlighting the notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if the sheet music, because it's a recording and the MIDI software like automatically turns it into sheet music, usually the notes won't line up perfectly, so they're always like
Yeah,
slightly
yeah, a little
off
bit
beat or
off.
something. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I started recording like not exactly on the beat, everything's going to be off by like a quarter note.
Mm-hmm.
So like half the time the note's going to be on the beat, half the time it's going to be off like by a quarter note or
Mm-hmm.
by a
Mm-hmm.
half note or something. So like everything is sort of like not well And if I record anything without using a strict metronome, then it's always going to drift from the metronome of the MIDI file.
Hmm.
So like the recording is going to sound just fine, but then when you look at the sheet music, it's going to be like all the notes are not like full beats or like full lengths of what they should be.
Hmm.
So like let's say like a 4/4 bar would actually like only be would maybe be like more like 5 beats instead. So like you get like 5 beats compressed into four, so like the sheet
Yeah,
music is
yeah, yeah.
unreadable.
I've seen that happen before. Yeah, yeah. It's a pain. You probably have to just like, I don't know, just like if someone were to transcribe, then you probably have to like hire somebody to like make it all look nice and tidy or something like that. But yeah, like
Yeah,
probably
I'd
just
have to
work.
like just do it from scratch, and I just generally don't
Effort.
take that time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, I'd say one thing I'd want to ask would be something that you brought up earlier was you learned how to try like very late in life. Um, how was that when so you weren't trying and then you went to university and then you were not able to try and then you had to basically drop out. So when did you learn then?
I feel like I haven't fully learned yet.
Okay.
What really gets me going is just passion for a project.
Mhm.
Like that, just if I'm passionate enough, I will put in the hours. But if I'm not feeling like it, I have a lot of trouble like full assing it if I'm not
Mhm.
feeling it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's like an ongoing process of learning to get that work ethic. And I feel like if I had like a really solid work ethic, I would could easily double my
Mhm.
output.
Is that something that you want, or are you reasonably happy with where you're at the moment and your output?
Well, maybe not double, but I'd definitely like to be able to produce like 8 or 9 videos a year instead of only six.
Mhm.
So I definitely want to improve on that, and like I don't really mind. Like I think I enjoy not feeling like I need to work like 60 hours a week.
Mhm.
I'm like happy that I have periods when I'm glad to just work 80 hours a week and I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
And I have periods when I'm fine working like 20, 30 hours a week and I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that this overall is fine with me. It's just the problem is when I set out like 6 hours in a day to work and I'm like, I went to bed so late last night that I wake up at 12 and so that's like 3 hours gone. And then
Yeah.
I try to like start working and I don't like quite get into it until like 2.5. And now I only have like 2.5 hours left to work. And I get some work done that day, but it's like I really only work like 2 hours. Like
Mhm.
if I, spent that time better, I could have done like 3 times the work. It's
Mhm.
just like it's that kind of getting more
Yeah,
productive that would really make a difference.
I might. Per, you can completely take this or leave this. It works for some people and it doesn't for others. But I found I would go so far as to say like my internet blocker actually changed my life basically. I felt like um, I simply could not get done what I wanted to. Like it was just so easy to get distracted, and then I would do it, and then I would feel bad afterwards, and then the cycle would just continue so often. But like I've got one which is not only like extremely robust, like I've had blockers before which are just so easy to circumvent, like if you know what you're doing. Whereas this one is really heavyweight and just does not let you do what you shouldn't do, and also it's like extremely customizable. Um, I've personally found it to be like I'd honestly say like starting it is has been one of the most like impactful things I've done in like the last 5 years potentially. Because like the point at which I knew it was working was when I'd had to configure it a lot because I'd had to feel like right I need this because it's customizable enough where you can't use you can block a certain website but you can use a subdomain of that website and it's really really granular and I found it really really useful. The point at which I knew it was working for me was that I was there and I tried all of the stuff that I would usually use to distract myself, and then I went into another room and sat down and I thought, man, I'm really bored. I guess I'd better do what I'm actually supposed to do, and like that was new, like
Yeah, yeah.
and that was kind of when I knew something had like shifted and changed. Um,
Hmm.
so that's something just to think about. Like I don't know whether or not you feel as though that would be useful. Or,
Yeah, I think I should probably give it a try. The one of my problems is that usually the places I need for my work are also source of entertainment. Like YouTube is very useful,
yeah,
so
uh-huh.
I'm gonna need to use it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
uh-huh.
can't just like go like no YouTube while you're working because then I can't get clips for my videos and so on. So like
So
it's a little tricky, but it's definitely doable with
yeah, so
the.
yeah, and then, so with the one I've got, like it gives you for certain, you can make it so it gives you allowances for certain websites. So um, you know, because it's one of those ones where you start off doing something useful like on YouTube, but then you go off down a rabbit hole. So if I give
Right.
myself right, you've got to get what you need to get done on YouTube in like an hour and a half or something like that. Um, there's also kind of like little workarounds that I use. So if I really need to watch something that's like longer than an hour and a half, then I'll go on one of those websites where you can convert YouTube to MP4 or something like that. And then so I'll watch the YouTube video, but then I won't have the distraction of like the sidebar and the recommended videos and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
yeah, at the beginning, like it was really really chaotic, but now I've got it like super regimented. So like if right under this if this contingency happens, then I've got to do this and stuff like that. Um,
I know I could definitely block like Twitter, Twitch, and Reddit, and that would
yeah, it makes a
that
that's
would
the funny
solve a lot of
thing.
problems.
That's the funny thing is what is it that it's like the Pareto principle that is often such a small amount that's actually causing so much of the pain basically,
Hmm.
and you can block like four domains and then your life gets so much better so quickly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but maybe worth a shout. Um, one thing I might ask you about is so let's say if I have no idea like who'll end up watching this, but let's imagine if there is um, let's imagine if let's say teenage Bismuth was watching this video now, um, someone who is talented but has poor work ethic and eventually that poor work ethic is may actually end up leading them into trouble. If teenage business was watching this video now, what advice would you give him?
Well, I'd say that one thing that I find really important, despite like my poor work ethic, is whatever I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make it as good as I can make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like that's something that I never sacrificed. Like if I don't feel like doing something, I'm not gonna do it shitty. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just not gonna do it at this time.
Yep.
If I'm doing something, I will always make it the way I think it should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like if you sacrifice quality, that's when you get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I feel like yeah, that's probably the most important thing in like in the content that I make. My biggest um, like the one thing I will never give up on is making it like high quality. And I just hope like my main hope is that people recognize that level of quality as like something they want and that something that brings them back to my channel is like
Mm-hmm.
because I know like there's a lot of stuff that I made that I could have done in like half the hours and it would have been like 85% as good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is like doubling your time spent on it worth that extra 15%? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it is, but there's definitely an argument, especially in like an economic argument, to say it's not. Like, I could have made twice the amount of videos that would have been almost as good. Maybe some of them would not have gotten as many views, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, it still overall would have been much better for me. But I just don't want to do that. I want to make it like exactly as good as I wanted to make it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think like if that's your main focus, even if your work ethic isn't great and you're not getting that much done, that much work done, if what you're doing is good, then it's gonna be worth it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. So, what is it about that advice that do you feel like teenage Bismuth needed but didn't have at the time?
Um, it's, you know, teenagers just don't really know how to care about that stuff, I guess.
Uh huh.
I guess I was never someone to do things poorly because I didn't care about it. It's more that I guess I never really cared that hard about like the quality of what I would put out in general.
Mm-hmm.
So like having like an actual like a real like intention of like me of just like making something that is good, like really
Worthwhile.
caring about the quality of what I'm doing. Like I feel like it's just something that I kind of got like as I aged a little bit more. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like teenage me was doing fine for a teenager, so
Uh huh. Uh huh.
he he can just like keep playing games if he wants. I guess my advice would be like get involved with speedrunning before 2012. You could do it in 2004 and it would have been fine.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Mm. Um. That's kind of interesting that you would say that. Well, I don't know. I would say that if your videos were only 85% as good as they are, then I think um they would actually suffer more than 15%, because I feel
Hmm.
like your whole obviously you brought up what is it like retro gaming mechanics explained that go even harder than you do, but like I feel like the people don't really go into a Bismuth video just kind of just to um I don't know, something to put on in the background, the like I mean I dare say someone has, someone's been streaming and they've had like a Bismuth video in the background, but I don't think that that's the primary audience. I feel like um I don't know, the real power behind your channel comes from the amount of effort um, and care you take with trying to break these concepts down, like precisely but meaningfully, and in a communicative way. And I think if you sacrifice 15%, I think so much of that would be lost. And I I think your channel would be it would cost your channel a lot more than 15%, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, like I think it would. I think overall my channel would be more successful just based on being able to put out more content,
Mhm.
but like each piece of content would be less meaningful if
Yeah,
that
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense. And I think that depending on the video, there are videos that like especially the ones that have like 2 billion plus views, there's definitely like a large amount of that public that doesn't really care that much.
Mhm.
And so like a slightly lower quality video would have been just fine for them.
Mhm.
But I feel like the taking that extra amount of time and care to really put into the video to make it as good as I can possibly make it,
Mhm.
really, I think it's what earns me the respect I got in the speedrunning
Mhm. I
community, and
agree,
that
100%.
matters to me a lot more than having more or less views.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And then my guess would also be is that I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, not being a particularly prolific creator, this could be rubbish. But I would guess that when it comes down to it, I think if someone is making content, just for the sake of putting content out there and it not being something that they love, I would guess that your approach is going to actually sustain you in like in more in the long term than just not actually caring that much.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you're right that uh, it helps me not burn out quicker, I
yeah,
guess, by like staying
exactly.
more invested.
And I think that's much more of a long term game. I think than just churning out whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm conscious we've just got over 2.5 hours. I feel like I've just about exhausted all the stuff that uh, I had to talk about. Is there anything that you feel like I haven't spoken about, or just something you would like to proclaim to the general public that you feel like is worth putting out there?
I think yeah, we've covered a lot of interesting questions and a lot of good topics to talk about. I know I'm gonna have to go make dinner soon,
Yeah,
so
yeah, I'm conscious of that. So yeah,
but yeah, I think we had a great talk, and
I enjoyed it a lot.
glad to be on your podcast and talk about all this stuff.
Cheers, man. Um, I think maybe this will be a good way to kind of try and finish it. So, you've seen the development of the speedrunning community for like a bit. I mean, over 10 years now.
Yeah,
Um,
almost 20, in fact. Yeah.
oh wow, yeah. So, um, with every community, there's always ways that it can go. Things can get worse, and things can get better. Um, what potential? Oh yeah, what would you like to see in the? Is there anything in particular you can think of that you would like to see in the next 20 years of speedrunning? Things that you feel like have the potential to be actualized that you think would be really cool, worthy to be.
Well, there's one thing that's going on in SMB1 that I think is insane, and it's someone named Flibbity Dibbity made a tool that lets you connect NES consoles to a computer,
Uh-huh.
and he has software that takes in all the information directly from the consoles and turn it into a live view of SMB1, like everyone playing at once.
Uh-huh.
And so he uses this for live events where all the runners are playing at once, and you can see the screen, all the Mario's moving, like all on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same
yeah,
screen with
yeah,
the
yeah,
mini
yeah. I
map.
think I've seen that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
And I
awesome.
think that's like an incredible technical achievement, and
Uh-huh.
that makes watching it feels like it makes Super Mario Brothers into an esport. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
like
yeah,
it
yeah.
has insane potential to be shown at like really large events like GDQs, but also like just large gaming events in general. Like just have tournaments, bring in all the top level players, and have like, or even have like larger races. I feel like the setup probably breaks down over like 8 or 10 consoles, but
Mm-hmm.
like just have like this insane like it's so fun to watch, and like it all you can see everything happening in real time, and
Mm-hmm.
the races feel so much closer when all the Marios are so close together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think like that would really help grow the speedrunning community to almost like esport level if that was like handled properly.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like that would be really interesting to see. But also in terms of like the speedrunning community itself, I feel like the community kind of reached a critical mass at this point where everyone who could hear about speedrunning has heard of speedrunning, and everybody who could be interested in speedrunning is or is about to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like the phase where there's this is it the sigmoid curve, I think it's called, like it's sort of like a curve that goes like this.
Uh-huh.
That sort of like shows you like the adoption of something.
Mm-hmm.
Like at first you got like a very few like early adopters, but as like more like word of mouth gets out and more people know about it, like the curve kind of grows up exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you reach like the halfway point of how many people can ever like be interested or be involved or
Mm-hmm.
like buy this or whatever thing you're tracking,
Mm-hmm.
once you reach the halfway point, then that curve like mirrors and it becomes the opposite where
Yeah.
like it goes closer and closer to the max.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like speedrunning reached that middle point around 2016, I want to
Okay.
say.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, we're like nearing the top of the sigmoid curve. And I think it just won't get that much larger than it is, especially like, in relation to the gaming community at large.
Mm-hmm.
Like speedrunning is pretty much the size it's always going to be.
Okay.
So I don't expect speedrunning to become like this incredibly large thing where like everyone does it, and like like these
Mm-hmm.
tournaments with like millions of viewers, and like I don't think that's gonna happen. I think like we've pretty much reached the maximum potential,
Mm-hmm.
but I still believe that there is so much left to do in all those games, and like
Okay.
so many records left to achieve, that I think like almost every game ever is forever gonna be an interesting speedrun.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's just like we never know what the future holds, and I just like, yeah, I like as time goes on, there's always more things to be interested about. So
Yeah, and then like, I think that I mean there might be people who watch this and think, oh man, well, speedrun is as big as it's ever going to get. That's going to be like a negative thing. Like I would say, having seen the growth of various subreddits over a period of several years, I would say that continual growth is not necessarily always a good thing in all ways.
yeah,
Um, I actually think in some respects, having a scene where uh, where I don't know where I don't know. There's just a certain level of passion that people have got for it. Um, actually, I know, like sustains that community in a very different way to one which has just become, like oversaturated
almost,
basically, and is appealing to
yeah,
the
or
lowest
almost
common
corporate.
denominator. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. So, if who knows, like whether or not that's true, but if you are correct, I think that could I don't know. I like where speedrunning is, and so if it were to remain like this, I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah, I think the growth of speedrunning slowing down in the last like 8 to 10 years is fine.
Hmm.
It's perfectly fine and expected.
Yeah.
And I also agree that having like these smaller game communities, like DK64, for instance, I think it's a little over 100 runs on the boards.
Yeah.
Active players like 10 or 12. Like it could definitely be a slightly more active game and it would be great, but the size of the community kind of feels like a large family where everyone gets along and everyone
Yeah.
like is
Yeah, dude.
great together. Like it's one of the most like helpful and friendly communities I've ever seen.
Hmm.
And you just lose that when you get like several hundred and thousands of people. It's
Hmm.
just kind of like Twitch chats. Like I find Twitch chats with over 1,000 viewers to not be interested.
Hundred
And
percent,
it's
dude.
interesting. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, obviously, there's only one way to find out. Like, we shall see what the future holds.
Yeah.
But for now, yeah, it was really awesome talking to you. Like, I had a really good time.
Thanks for having me.
And I spoke to you a little bit about what your next video was going to be, but it's so secret that like you couldn't divulge it to me. But I'm
Yeah,
but I'm sure
it is a national secret.
uh-huh. But I'm sure everyone who's watching this is gonna be stoked for whatever it is. So we look forward to that, man. But yeah, for the moment, thanks for coming on, and be well, and cheers to everybody in chat for hanging out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So, in
Right.
a bit.